Hi, guys. Hello, every single one of you lovely people out there, my fellow film exiles out there in the cinematic wastelands. Welcome to another episode of the Exiles Network News Podcast. We took a bit of a hiatus due to coronavirus and just, readjusting to the rhythm and flow of this new normal. We haven't been able to record, edit, process a podcast for you guys, but we are back and we have a good episode for you. It's the usual crew, the three amigos, the three musketeers, the holy trinity of film exiles, or maybe the unholy trinity. It's I, Christian, and Paul. So welcome to the show, my road warriors. Christian, hey, what's up?
What's up, man? It's good to hear your voice, and it's good to be back with you and Paul. It's been a minute. Been a minute.
Absolutely. It's been way too long. And Paul, Mr.
Yeah,
Positivity, the superhero with the ray of sunshine. How you doing?
I'm bringing the sunshine again. I've had a nice little break. Got through a few fantasy football drafts. Busy with work.
Nice.
Got to watch a couple shows. So, but I'm glad to be back and looking forward to getting into it tonight. So
Paul,
good to talk to you guys as always.
I'm 0-2 in my leagues, man. 0-2
I'm
already.
I'm 2-1, 2-1 so far. So
First year that I haven't been in the fantasy football league, and I'm kind of missing it. I'll get back to it next year. But on that note, talking about stuff that we did, when we were, absent from podcasting, let's just start with what you guys have been watching in terms of whether it's cinema, whether it's streaming, television, whatever. And let's start with Christian. Christian, tell us a couple of things that you have been consuming and give us like a brief review of them.
Sure. Yeah, my wife and I have gone back and we've been checking out some older stuff again, and we've streamed a couple of older movies that we wanted to rewatch and things like that. But three things that were new. One is new-ish that we streamed, and I'll try to bang through them fairly quickly. Is the first one is we've been checking out that stupid cartoon Star Trek Lower Decks. So you guys know I'm a huge Trekkie. I like old Trek and I like new Trek too. This is interesting. It's in that weird animation style that you've pointed out, Lupe, and it actually is better, the animation, than I thought it would be. Especially the music is actually fairly good. It's on par with the Star Trek movies, and the animation of the ships, the starship itself, and some of the effects like the transporter and things like that are actually done very well. I would not call the comedy highbrow in any sense of the word. It's not quite as sophomoric as something, like Family Guy, which I do enjoy, but you know what you're getting into when you watch Family Guy. You do need to have a little bit of a background in Star Trek to laugh at some of the jokes. But when the series is over, I'd definitely be looking forward to, doing a review with you. If you're a Star Trek fan and you want something that's a little more family friendly, watch it. Be careful with young kids. There's some jokes that are a little off color and they do curse sometimes. So you do want to be careful with that. And they bleep it, but still, when they say fuck, and bleep it, you just got to watch it with that. But it's definitely, if you're into Star Trek and you want something that's not necessarily going to challenge you intellectually, this is definitely a funny show to watch. The second thing, if you're into documentaries and you're a gamer, especially with all the announcements we've been getting with PS5 and the new Xbox, check out High Score. It's a very short 6-episode documentary on Netflix that was made by a young woman that spent time in France, and she wanted to talk about the challenges that the video game industry faced back in the 1980s, moving all the way to the 3D era. It talks about the console wars between Sega and NES and everything. And one of the things I really liked about it as a musician is they go back especially to Japan, and they talk to these composers and these guys that made some of the Super Mario music and the Legend of Zelda music, and how these guys really understood that music can make or break your video game experience. And if the music's terrible, it's going to kill it. And especially as they started getting into the 3D era where music became much more, symphony, and these games became much more cinematic. These guys really understood that. And it was a really cool, short 6 episodes that was very well done. Spent time in Japan, spent time in Europe, spent time in the United States, goes back to the old video game competitions. It was a lot of fun. So definitely check that one out. And the last thing I'd mention, I don't know where my wife and I have been, but we finally got a chance to watch the thing. Guys, I watched Cobra Kai finally, and I freaking love it. I mean, I I loved the Karate Kid trilogy. The third one's kind of shit, but I did love the Karate Kid trilogy. This was such a good mix of nostalgia. It's corny in parts, it's silly, but at the same time, it really like kind of updates that old 1980s struggle to today. The kids are very likable, except for one of them you want to punch in the face, but that's pretty much that's the point of it all. But Ralph Macchio and the guy that plays Johnny, the roles are kind of shifted in this, so it kind of brings it up on its head, and you start to really sympathize with Johnny a lot more, considering the horrible life that he's had. It was, if you really like that and you're into the 1980s stuff, I think you're really going to enjoy Cobra Kai. We're really looking forward to the third season. Again, don't expect, this isn't something that's like this truly cinematic experience, but if you liked it and you're into that kind of ecosystem and you were into the characters before, you're going to like what they did here, especially the fact that they tried to get you into the new characters, the kids, because they're really the ones that are carrying the show. You know, Dan LaRusso and Johnny, that's one thing, but if those two, they're the heart and soul of the show, sure, but if they don't have anything surrounding them that doesn't work, those two guys are going to get old really quick and you're not going to care. But the kids that are a part of this, especially Daniel and Johnny's kids, they're really important to the heart and soul of the show as well. So those were three things that we've been watching that I'll throw out there.
Nice. I think the one that really piqued my interest is the video game documentary. I'll definitely put that on the to watch list. Not sure when I'm going to watch it, but it's definitely on there. Cobra Kai reminds me of the YouTube now failed YouTube Red streaming service. And I'm mad at that streaming service because there's a show that was on there called Impulse.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best series I have ever seen. Such brilliant writing. It's from Doug Liman, so you know it's good. He directed a couple episodes. He's the showrunner, wrote most of it, obviously with the writing room as well. And he only got 2 episodes, and it was just brilliant. It's just that nobody subscribed to YouTube Red, so nobody watched any of the series. Luckily, Cobra Kai was picked up by Netflix. If only Netflix could pick up Impulse, it would be one of the best things on Netflix immediately. But
that would be good, because that's from that Jumper series.
Yes,
and
it
that
is
was
absolutely from the Jumper franchise, and I'm telling you, it's so good.
Yeah.
So
There's
thanks
only
for sharing
2 episodes,
that.
Lupe?
What'd you say?
There's only 2 episodes?
No, 2 seasons.
2 seasons. Okay, that makes more sense. Sorry.
Yeah, no, not just 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's 20 episodes. 20 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that's worth investing some time in.
Yeah, no, it is. It is actually. It doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but it ends with you wanting more, if that makes sense. Like, you can watch both of them and be like, all right, I've watched something that concludes, but you're like, this is so good, I want so much more. But then, you're just left hanging. So, Paul, what about you? What have you been watching? What have you been up to?
Yeah, well, I got a few things we've been watching. So to Christian's points, the High Score is one that I've got on my watch list that I think my wife might actually watch with me, and I think that's going to be up my alley with my own video game reference being mostly in the late 80s and early 90s. So that's probably my time that I can relate to. So I'm looking forward to watching that. Have not got to it yet. Cobra Kai, I've had so many of my friends tell me that I will absolutely love Johnny. It comes highly recommended from everyone that's seen it. I have not got to it yet, but it is also on my list just to see what the fuss is about. But I've been watching. My wife and I watched the first season of Dirty John on Netflix because we saw season 2 being advertised and thought we should watch season 1 first. And I get the impression that the 2 seasons are not related. We haven't actually got season 2 yet, but it looks like an entirely different cast. Season 1 was fine. It was a slow go early on, but it picked up and was decent. I don't know if I'd highly recommend it, but it was entertaining enough. But mostly what I've been watching is recently The Boys and season 2 and Raised by Wolves, and The Boys is something I'm watching on my own, something I can discuss with my friends. My wife won't watch that with me, but I've been happy with season 2 so far. We're 4 episodes in. It is what it is, right? It's not deep. It's a satirical comedy. So I think I've seen people sometimes a little disappointed by it. Because I think maybe they're expecting something with a little more to say, and it does have some social commentary, but it's under the umbrella of a satirical comedy, which I'm enjoying. So I think it's more of the same. Some of the plot lines are wearing a little thin for me this season, but I'm still enjoying it. So looking forward to each new episode. Raised by Wolves, I am watching with my wife. I actually convinced her to watch it with me, and we're both really enjoying it. And I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best shows I've seen in a while. So if you're a fan of science fiction and you haven't had a chance to check that one out yet, I would highly, highly recommend Raised by Wolves. We're
Nice.
5 episodes in now, so that I think I'm 4.5 episodes in myself. We had to turn off. We were falling asleep last night. We were trying to watch episode 5, but it's really good. And other than that, watch Mulan, which we're going to talk about later in the show. And my daughter and I have been plowing through The Simpsons. We're almost done season 12 now, and she's convinced I'm the live action embodiment of Homer Simpson. Which take that for what you will. It's a commentary on what life has done to me over the last 20 years, I guess. But I don't totally disagree with her. When you watch the episode, it's absolutely shocking how 20 years later you watch these things and you're like, oh my God, I've practically become that character. She's like, in fairness, she said I'm not quite as dumb, but other than that, it's there's a lot of similarities. Oh my God, there's a lot of similarities. So it's eye-opening. So I'm enjoying that, going back and watching it from the beginning and sort of getting an adult perspective on it, right? Because The Simpsons came out when I was in my early teens, and I stopped watching probably around season, like when the movie came out, I was pretty much done with Simpsons, and I think that was around season 17 or 18. So I haven't seen anything since. So I'm looking forward to getting to the last 12 or 13 years that I haven't seen. So so that's what we've been doing. Lupe, what have you been watching?
As for me, for some reason I've been stuck on period pieces. Like I've stuck to this theme of like 19 sort of like turn of the century, 1930s, 20s, 10s, whatever period pieces, and I just have not been able to escape that twilight zone. So I started with a series called Vienna Blood, and it's set in Vienna, Austria. And it's around like the time of World War One, and it follows two unlikely companions, and they form this detective duo. It's basically a ripoff of Sherlock and Watson. It's a gentleman who works in the police department, so he's more stoic and stodgy. And then you've got this guy who comes from the nascent industry of criminal psychology and Freudian psychology, when it's just a new thing. So he's more the quirky one who does the psychological analyses of the serial killers, and they go on these adventures to solve cases. So you have this sort of wonder kid with this more conservative guy who doesn't really understand this new thing that this kid is doing, and it's really good. Their chemistry is really good. It's a British production, so obviously costuming and set designs, like when it comes to period pieces, like that's like afternoon tea for British. They make them so well, and they make them so easily. So it's very entertaining. It's very intelligent. It's only 3 episodes long, which is the interesting thing. A lot of people might not know, but British series tend to be fewer episodes but longer run times. So they'd be about maybe like an hour 20 minutes, an hour 15, that sort of thing. But then it'd never be 10 episodes. It'll be about 3, 4, that sort of thing. Like you saw with Sherlock. Actually, the series Sherlock had very short number of episodes. So that's the first one. Then I went from Vienna Blood to The Alienists. And The Alienist, it originated on TNT, but it's also on HBO and on HBO Max as well. And that one's a little bit more popular. You may have seen ads for it. And it stars Daniel Bruhl, who was a villain in Captain America: Civil War. It also stars Elle Fanning, and it stars who's the guy that plays Gaston in Beauty and the Beast.
Is that Luke Evans?
Luke Evans,
Luke Evans, yes.
Yeah.
So it's that trio, and it's another turn of the century period piece detective story where they're hunting a serial killer. Brilliant, really good. Obviously, those are 3 great actors, and the craftsmanship in terms of production value, cinematography, everything is very good. That one was quite difficult to watch because it was very ghastly. It was about a child serial killer, not just a child murder, but a child serial killer. So that and there were some like really horrible images and even just the crimes, even when they described them, the imagery that it conjured, that was a difficult watch. It really was very dark. The tone was very oppressive in a very good way. Um, then I pivoted from that to Perry Mason. And Perry Mason also, that one was set in the 1930s and during like Depression era, and it's also that one was also an investigation of a child murder as well, a
Jesus.
ghastly child murder. So I've just been stuck in this Twilight Zone period piece detective series, but they've all been fantastic and well done. I would rank them. I'd say Perry Mason was the most enjoyable, really. Just the character of Perry Mason, his story, he's quite charming, but at the same time, he's a little bit down in his luck and a little bit of, I don't want to say a loser, but everything is not, all rainbows and sunshine. He has struggles in his life, and it's made by HBO, and HBO never misses. They are just so good at this thing called creating content. They're just amazing. Then The Alienist, which is also good. Then Vienna Blood, which is also, three of them are good, but Perry Mason kind of stood a little bit above. The Alienist is great, but it's just difficult to watch. But those are the three things I've been watching. Then right now I'm watching Project Blue Book, which is a conspiracy theory series. It's not so good, to be sincere. It's quite pulpy. The acting's not that great. The visual effects are not the best. It doesn't have the best stories or whatever. But I'm watching this, whatever. And then I'm going to pivot to Netflix's Dark, which I am going to review with Brandon on the podcast channel. Nice. So you guys look out for our review or discussion of Netflix's Dark. But that's what I've been doing. I've been watching series these days. That's what I'm really into. There are a lot of movies I can watch. Mulan being amongst them, which we're going to talk about, but I just haven't been feeling that format. I'm really enjoying the length and the depth and the breadth and the volume with which storytellers can really, feed you these amazing series, and you can really spend a lot of time with the characters. What do you guys think of the formats of series versus film?
I think streaming is really, like, series are really geared, that it's almost like perfectly in sync, with streaming. And yeah, streaming is great. Obviously you can still tell a wonderful story, and you could still have high production value, and you can still have something feel very cinematic and everything. But the three of us have talked how many times about like Netflix and how some of their movies feel almost second rate. They just crank them out. So you get that strange digital look to them, and it's not, there's something missing. But with series, like, streaming seems like it's just tailor made for it. It's perfect. You can watch 2 episodes at a time. You can watch one. The creator might have 4 seasons to really tell their story if they want to. And many times they have a lot more control than you would expect them to. So they really can expand on their narrative. And if it's streaming, most of the time, if they wanted to go off the deep end and really do something that's kind of off the deep end, it's not like
they have, yeah.
Yeah, they don't have like a master to answer to. They could just go off the deep end if they want to, and
a lot more creative freedom.
Yeah, so I like it. I like how the series. I just think streaming it's almost a very natural fit right now, and it seems like we can get many different stories that maybe we weren't going to get before.
Would that be, Paul? Would that be another reason why the theatrical experience is in danger? Just because it seems like the format of streaming is just better all around, and for the reasons that Christian just gave.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think certainly at my stage of life, time and energy is an issue, right? So we've got, obviously we're busy with our careers, we're busy with parenting. Not only does that tire you out and limit the amount of time you have, but if you want to go watch something that's not child oriented, or even if it is child oriented, your time is constrained. So by the time my wife and I can actually watch something on our own, we don't have the energy to watch a 2-hour movie. Like, we're lucky if we could stay awake for 30 minutes of an episode. So if we know we can find a series that we like, we can watch that at our leisure. We know we can, like Christian said, if you get 3-4 seasons of something, 10 episodes a shot, we can watch that at our pace. If it's 30 minutes one night, if we got, if we have a coffee and we watch 2.5 episodes the next night, great. But it's very much chunked out into sizes that that fit our stage of life better. Also, I think to the point that it lets storytellers tell the story they want. I think that's a benefit. Now, it can also be a hindrance, right? Because I find sometimes shows drag if they're trying to get to an 8 or a 10 episode per season limit. Sometimes there's just not that much story to tell. But what I will say is that even at 8 and 10 episodes, it's a huge improvement over 23 and 24 episodes of The Walking Dead, which is turned into utter garbage. You know what I mean? I think the first season of Walking Dead was like 6 episodes, and it followed the comics, and it was great. And then the more they started stretching it out to try and milk money out of it, milk viewership out of it, then you start splitting it into 2 halves. And next thing you know, you're watching Young and the Restless with zombies in the background. Right? So it's, I literally cannot watch regular cable television anymore. Like it's streaming or nothing. I don't watch anything that, would be seen on regular cable with commercials. It's not part of my reality anymore.
Wow.
We cut ours. It's
bougie. Bougie.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
we cut ours.
It's all, first of all, it's got limitations in terms of the type of content. It's stretched out to fit elongated formats and multiple seasons, and the story gets watered down. And then it's interrupted by commercials unless you DVR it and fast forward, which I just don't have the time or energy for anymore. So yeah, it's just not something I even consider. It's not on my radar. So streaming is great. We still like movies for, family movie nights on the weekend. Like there's 1 or 2 nights a weekend where we can maybe get together as a family and watch a movie, or, if my daughter goes to sleep with my in-laws over at their place for the night, my wife and I could watch a movie. Although again, most of the time we don't have the energy to watch a whole movie. We'll watch, an episode of a show and that's enough.
Yeah.
So, it seems to be the way things are going, at least from my perspective, my demographic. That's what fits my lifestyle. So.
Nice. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing what you've been watching. I hope we've inspired some people to check out some shows. And with that, let's get into our breakdown of topics that we're going to discuss for the day. I think it's a very good episode that we have prepped for our audience. I think there's good variety. So we are going to start with the most explosive, most emotional, most just mind-bending one. And it's this epic battle between the little guy and the big bad wolf. It's Ray Fisher versus Warner Media. Then we're going to talk about Tenet, the film that braved the coronavirus and took the plunge by leaping into theaters. We're going to talk about its box office performance. We're going to talk about what it meant, what it means, and what it will mean going forward. We're going to talk about Mulan. Mulan is another film that has also braved the pandemic. It had a different release strategy from Tenet. While Tenet released in theaters, Mulan did a mixed, tiered release strategy. So we'll react to that, talk about some of the political issues surrounding it, some of the controversy, some of the piracy issues, and we're just going to do a bit of a deep dive. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. Then Jonathan Majors is having a moment. It's been a great, 2020 has not been the best year for a lot of us, but for him, it's been kind of a dope year because he was in The Five Bloods as an amazing character, really a show stealer. And then he's been in Lovecraft Country, which has been a runaway hit for HBO. There's been rave reviews for his performance. And in a flash, he was announced as a villain in the next Ant-Man movie. He's going to be playing a character called Kang the Conqueror. sounds like really imposing. Sounds like it could be something good. Hopefully, he bucks the trend or the major trend of not so good Marvel villains. Although there are great ones in there. Give Thanos his credit. The Winter Soldier, and several others. But yeah, we're gonna talk a bit about this. Our Marvel expert Christian is on the beat, and we will be tossing it to him to lead us in that conversation. Then in our coming soon section, we're going to talk about the Dune trailer and the trailer for the Mandalorian season 2. And so, without further ado, without any more preamble, let's get right into it. Ray Fisher versus Warner Media. David versus Goliath. The underdog versus the overdog. In 2020, who will win? So, I mean, this is an epic, dramatic battle full of twists and turns. And just when you think it's gonna zig, the story zags. Ray Fisher is a fresh-faced protagonist to Hollywood. His only movie of credit is as Cyborg, aka Victor Stone, in the Butchered Justice League film, and his only TV credit is as a supporting character in season 3 of True Detective. He played a descendant of Mahershala Ali's lead character. He's a character. It's an actor who a lot of people believe has a lot of potential. He comes from the theater, so this is someone who, when you talk of thespian ship, he's at the top of the craft. He's not just some guy who just came off the street and just decided to start acting. He claimed in an explosive it was an attack that Joss Whedon conducted himself with gross, abusive, and unprofessional behavior towards the cast and crew of Justice League, and that it needed to be investigated, and consequences needed to be meted out. Following that, what we hear is that he says he got a call from the DC Films president Walter Hamada, and that Walter Hamada tried to assuage the situation and tried to shield Jeff Johns. And Jeff Johns is someone who is currently working within that tier of the institution. Ray Fisher exposed this private conversation and this attempt by Walter Hamada to shield Jeff Johns from justice. And after that, Warner Brothers, in uncharacteristic fashion, I would say it's characteristic, but at the same time uncharacteristic fashion, went on the offensive against Ray Fisher, using several tactics at their disposal. They did a little bit of a distraction with the look over here, guys, don't look up this way. And then they also did a direct assault by claiming that basically he was lying, and then dropping some little things, talking about him, being in negotiations for a role. So a lot of what they were doing, Ray Fisher described it as scattershot, desperate and scattershot attempt to discredit him and to continue protecting those in power. And Warner Brothers claimed that he never spoke to an investigator, and Ray Fisher refuted that with proof and evidence, and exposed some things about the quote-unquote independent third-party investigator. And then later on, he got, after getting a lot of support from fans, he got support from Jason Momoa, who basically backed up everything that he's been saying and actually exposed some even more explosive and egregious facts, which is that one of their distracting tactics, which was to announce that Jason Momoa, one of the cast and crew of Justice League, was actually in a movie that was produced, that is going to be produced by Jeff Johns and John Berg. He exposed that that was a lie. So, I mean, other people have also backed him up. People like Kiersey Clemons, people like the actress who plays the mother to Victor Stone in Justice League. So it's been a huge back and forth. I would like to hear what you guys think of this evolving situation. Feel free to go in. We are exiles after all. Nobody's going to cancel you because you've already been canceled. So let's start with Christian and tell us your unbridled thoughts on this entire situation. Don't hold back.
There are two things. The first thing is there's a clear spin job happening at the top of WB. And it doesn't really matter whether you believe Warner Brothers or whether you believe Ray Fisher at this point. Forget that for a second. Forget who you believe, forget what you've read, forget whatever. There's a spin job happening at the top here. And the spin job seems like it's a little more than just trying to defend themselves and gain a better position. They're actively trying to bring somebody down. And at the same time, it looks like they could potentially be protecting somebody at the top. And we all have our ideas on who that could be. So I won't necessarily go in there, but it's just interesting to me that this is happening. It seems like it's pretty clear. The more, like at the very beginning when you guys asked me about it, and I wasn't as deep into it as you guys were, and I was learning a little bit more about it. I'm always about people are innocent until they're proven guilty. I'm always that way. So Ray is innocent unless he's proven guilty at some point. And okay, we can kind of say WB is innocent. Is even Joss Whedon innocent until he's proven guilty? Yeah, but where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Where there's smoke, there's definitely fire. So shit was definitely going down behind the scenes. And Ray opened his mouth, and the more I read about it, the more you guys sent me stuff, it looked like we're basically going to punish you because of this. So a lot of bad stuff. Like that's number one. And number two, and by the way, like people completely turning away, like not even acknowledging it. You can say, I hate Justice League, I hate Zack Snyder, I hate the movement, I hate this, I hate whatever. Fine. Open your eyes though and at least look at it from a clear and sober-eyed place, please, and then make your decision. You could be a huge Marvel fan. You could love Joss Whedon. Lupe, you and I talked about that just a couple of weeks ago. I'm extremely disappointed. Like when the X-Men movies came out, I loved Bryan Singer and what he did, and everything that's happened since then has made me sickened. And it's like the road cut of Days of Future Past is one of my favorite comic book movies, and it's skeevy watching it, but at the same time, Patrick Stewart's in it, and Ian McKellen and Halle Berry and all. So it's like it's just still a good movie, but this tarnishes everything. So now everything that Bryan Singer does from here on out is tarnished. I don't care what anyone says. It just is. You have to question, this guy's messed up. He is messed up. So that's what I'm saying. So we have to look at this now, and you have to pay attention to what's happening. The second thing to me that is surprising was the reaction from some of the fans. Now, I don't expect everybody to rush to Ray's defense, and I don't expect, I'm not expecting that necessarily. But why are there so many people that are rushing online to defend a multi-billion-dollar company that has done questionable things and supported questionable people? Why are you rushing to the defense? Like, I'm not seeing people outside of your movement rushing to defend Ray as vehemently, but they're rushing to defend Warner Brothers. They're rushing to defend a guy like Jeff. I don't like why. Why is that happening? Why is it so many people are rushing to that side and not as many are rushing to Ray, who, by the way, for all intents and purposes, seems like a gentleman and a nice man. And like everything I've ever seen about him seems like he's just a cool guy and he's just starting out. And look, Ray flat out said that other people will come forward, and they have, right? So you just mentioned some of the people that came forward. And now Jason has. And I don't know about you guys, but I've seen a little bit of a shift since Jason came out. I've seen some of those people that have been like, you know what, Ray, whatever. Now Jason said it, and it's like, oh. I hate even asking this question. I'm going to shut up after this because I probably should shut up. is there a racial thing going on here?
Mm.
You know, it's a black guy saying it, so it's like, you know, whatever. Now we got Jason jumping into it. Now, like, if all of a sudden Ben Affleck were to jump in and say something,
Mm-hmm.
if Gal Gadot was suddenly say something, I stand with Ray Fisher. Now, all of a sudden, do we clap our hands and say, oh, we got to listen to this now? It's kind of like, you know, Baega, when John is going out there, like, look, that guy, there were racist shit was fired his way during Force Awakens. A lot of it. And it's only recently people have started to listen to him. I'm just wondering, is it just like, you know what? Was there a power play going on there? Like they're not going to listen to him, whatever it is. Like it's going to be easy basically to shut Ray up. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be easy to sweep this under the rug. If that's the case, I've said this before in previous podcasts, continue to do what you're doing, Ray. Open your fucking mouth. Don't close it. Keep saying it. Let the truth. And every time, by the way, it's looked as if somebody like WB or whatever has turned around and been like, nah, Ray's not doing whatever. He's not complying. He's not cooperating with the investigation. Bang. He comes out with evidence. And he's got emails and screenshots to his team saying the exact opposite. So he's basically been like, don't, and you're telling me I'm the only one here? There's other people around me that were part of this, and they're turning around and they're saying that this is going. Look, we've talked about this. We talked about Josh Whedon and Charisma Carpenter and all this stuff. This shit can't continue no matter what. I'll stop here. I understand it's innocent until proven guilty. We need to allow this to come out. Nobody should be quieted. Nobody should be shut up. Let the evidence continue to come out and let this investigation continue to happen. He said other people were going to come up, and look, he's a big mouth and a big name. So if people weren't paying attention before, please pay attention to it now. I will admit to you that a month or two ago, I was not paying attention to this, and I've been paying attention to it a lot more recently. There's so much going on here that meets the eye, and I'm really hoping, and I'm not trying to throw flame, I'm not trying to throw fuel on a fire. I'm really hoping that some of this stuff wasn't trying to get pushed on the rug, because like we got a young actor who doesn't have a lot in his resume in Hollywood, and he's a person of color, so we can push him around. I'm just saying. So sorry.
No, very, very valid and a very good opening salvo. Paul, what do you think of the situation?
Yeah, well, I think, let me start off by saying that, based on what we've seen and based on what I've seen Ray Fisher say and the way he speaks about it, I have no doubt that something has occurred that needs to come to light. Like, I don't think he's the kind of person that would make up a frivolous claim without very carefully and meticulously ensuring that he has a legitimate case that's based on something more than just emotion over, creative differences, let's say. So I don't think that a lot of the arguments against him are going to turn out to be valid. So to your points, though, Christian, why is it that people defend a corporation against someone who, is clearly feels aggrieved? I think it comes back to tribalism. I think he's attacked their faves. He's attacked Jeff Johns. He's attacked Joss Whedon. He's attacked the people that were trying to bring them the bright colors and the lighthearted fun and the heroes being heroes. And they don't want people that are actually heroic. They want a superficial, candy-coated, childlike cartoon level of heroism. So the actual character of the people involved doesn't matter. What matters is the simplicity of the heroism and the brightness of the colors that are portrayed on screen. And they lump they lump Ray Fisher in with the Snyder crowd, which is the bad guys, and they lump Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon in with the people that are trying to give them the lighthearted hope and optimism that they so desperately crave. And that's where sides are drawn, right? So I think that's where that comes from. And then this idea that Jason Momoa suddenly gave him credibility, is that a racial thing? I don't think so. I think what it is that you have one person out on their own who has not given specific claims as to what went on. The only thing that's come to light is the Booyah thing, which you can understand why he wouldn't want to say that. I mean, he's trying to bring an authenticity and a seriousness to the character. And they're like, no, we're just going to cut all that shit, but we want you to throw a booyah in there, would you? and maybe I can't feel my toes. Like, no shit, he'd be pissed about that. But I'm sure there's more than that, because that really, at the end of the day, is creative differences. And a lot of the people that are, I think, arguing against Ray Fisher are saying, well, you're a paid actor. If they change direction with how they want the character portrayed, your job is to portray the character the way they want it. But I think like I say, based on what we know of Ray Fisher and, his obvious intelligence and thoughtfulness, there's got to be more to it than that. But we didn't really have anything else to hang our hats on with that narrative, aside from Ray Fisher's word. And a few people, more recently, I think Kersey Clemens chipped in with an I stand with Ray Fisher. I saw Karen Bryson give him some support publicly. But we didn't have, any of the other main cast members come out and support this, even though we've heard rumors, like obviously the boob flop on Gal Gadot when she refused to do that, right? But she hasn't come out and said anything. So I think what Jason Momoa did was gave him credibility, not because of a racial thing, but because of the conviction of what he said. I mean, there was no subtlety in Momoa's comments, right?
No.
I'll read the quote because he said, "This shit has to stop and needs to be looked at. Ray Fisher and everyone else who experienced what happened under the watch of Warner Brother Pictures needs proper investigation." So right there, it's not just Ray Fisher, it's Ray Fisher and everyone else. And then he goes on to say, "I just think it's fucked up that people released a fake Frosty announcement without my permission to try to distract from Ray Fisher speaking up about the shitty way we were treated on the Justice League reshoots. Serious stuff went down. It needs to be investigated, and people need to be held accountable." So what he's done there is he said it's not just Ray Fisher and it's not just Booyah, right? So that kills that narrative right there. There's more people, and there was more stuff, and it was serious. And there's no room for interpretation left in his words, right? He gives you that honesty that very few people will. The I don't give a fuck honesty, which I think makes him so endearing because it's so rare, especially in this industry. So I think that's where that comes from. I don't think this is just nobody believed him because he was a black guy. Now that another guy stepped in, we believe it. I don't think that's what this is about. I mean, maybe for a small segment of the audience, but I don't think that's.
If I may,
that's
Paul,
the bigger issue.
I hope I didn't come across as like that's the only reason.
No, I've seen that. I've seen that narrative online. I've seen it too. I've seen people saying like, "Oh yeah, it took a non-black guy to come out and support him for you to believe it." But I don't think this is about race. I think this is. I shouldn't actually discount that because in its origin, a lot of this probably is about race, right? I mean, Ray Fisher is trying to bring like at least in Ray Fisher's case personally, he's trying to bring an authenticity to the character and a story that reflects his life experiences and the message they're trying to tell in that story. And someone else came in and said, "Yeah, no one wants to hear that. We're just going to scrap that, and we want a booyah from you." So yeah, there is a racial element at its origin, but again, that's a creative differences thing. There's a lot more to this based on Ray Fisher's wording and on Jason Momoa's wording than just the creative differences in the story they want to tell and an approach. Right? It's more than just that, obviously, but we still don't have those details. And that's where the story weakened. And now you finally got a voice like Momoa coming out and backing him with strength and with no uncertainty that there are bigger issues going on than just creative differences. So I think that's where it comes from. I don't think this is that he needed a non-black person to validate him. It's just he needed another person and preferably a big name to do it, right? And that's what he got in Momoa. Yeah, Lupe, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I mean, my view on this issue is comes from such an interesting perspective because I have been animus against Jeff Johns for such a long time. I've been saying fuck Jeff Johns for so long that now that everyone else is saying fuck Jeff Johns, I'm just like, okay, like it's kind of like it's so strange because I felt like almost like the lone guy yelling on a mountaintop. And then now that everyone is shouting with me, I'm like, I'm just quiet in terms of content because I've been, the funny thing is that my grievances with Jeff Johns actually had nothing to do with, well, no, I won't say nothing to do with Ray Fisher because yes, I did point out the fact of what he did to the storylines of people of color in the film. Something that I said several times, and I think people obviously believed that it hurt me personally, but I don't think that people understood the scope of it, right? How it affects people of color as a whole. They might have thought, oh, that's a personal thing, which, Lupe, you're entitled to your opinion, fine. But to see Ray Fisher, people like Ray Fisher and John Boyega come out and talk about these issues validates that, right? Validates that on a larger systemic scale. And I hope that it helps people to look closer and see that there are actually issues with things like this, whether they're done on purpose or whether it's by omitting things. As I've said, there's no excuse. We know too much. We've come too far. It's just unacceptable, and people need to be more mindful. Zack Snyder is mindful enough when he casts people of color, when he writes his stories to make them more authentic, make them more inclusive, make sure that at his table everybody eats, you know. So there's no excuse for other people to come in and because of inherent biases that they're not aware of, or inherent biases that they're fully aware of, makes no difference. The effect is the same. Mistreat, sideline, shortchange, uh, box in, stereotype people of color. So that's from this episode. That's really been my reaction to it. The fact that Ray Fisher in particular has spearheaded this, and it's so personal to him. And I remember when it first started and we were talking about what was going to happen, I talked about how personal it was to Ray Fisher, and we said it. Three of us, we agreed that Warner Brothers has to watch out, and it seems like they didn't listen to us. I don't know why. I thought that they listened to the E&M podcast every single week, but
Oh, they
obviously
don't?
obviously they don't, because if they did, they'd have heard us loud and clear when we said he's not joking around. The tactics that they pulled out against him, they backfired completely, because you're in a situation where you're the dominant force. You're the overdog. You cannot be punching down. Like, what are you doing punching down on a little guy?
Yeah.
Trying to discredit him. It makes you look guilty. It makes your entire operation just look shady and shisty from the top down. Like, you're supposed to be in damage control. You're supposed to isolate and amputate all cancerous and toxic limbs. Like, this is the time to distance yourself from Jeff Johns. The time for, even if you want to, quote unquote, reprimand him in a very soft and soft way, do that. But as an entire organization, you're coming out against Ray Fisher. That was a wrong move. And the way he countered them and did it in the court of public opinion, he's on his P's and Q's, and he's about that life. He's ready for this. And it might get to the point where the Screen Actors Guild gets involved. But I just got to give him props. It's a lot of respect to him, because he has everything to lose, but he's ready to fight to the end. And when we talk about superheroes and heroic deeds, forget all those fantasies. This is like real life heroism, and I feel like people need to recognize and champion it more. As Christian said, guilt, innocence until proven guilty, right? In this case. But what we need everybody to be heard, right? We need the playing field to be leveled. We need there to be no threat, no possibility even of retribution against Ray Fisher for bringing these charges and accusations to light and into official channels. Obviously, the quote-unquote independent third-party investigator was neither independent nor a third party. And he was smart enough to identify that and circumvent that. And so the next step, Warner Brothers, Warner Media, AT&T, they had better come correct, because this is going to be a festering wound. It's going to get worse and worse and worse, and they better do something about it. My beef with Jeff Johns, even if this Ray Fisher thing never came out, I still have a lot of beef with Jeff Johns. And I've said I'm going to be against him until he comes out and apologizes and makes amends. I believe in second chances. I believe in forgiveness, but he has done none of the above. And so until then, it's fuck Jeff Johns.
Well, and
And
Lupe,
that's the motto.
to that point, what do you think Ray Fisher is looking for to this? Because
I think
I
I
think he
think
might just want an apology, a public
it's no.
apology, you
I
know?
think I think that an actual apology, acknowledgement, like sincere apology, acknowledgement, and
Yeah,
obviously not just words, even like actions, like whether
yeah,
it's
change.
yeah, some sort of change, something like going to sensitivity training or sponsoring something, or saying something like, I'll be a champion for how we can do better, that sort of thing. Like people always want, don't just say it, show that you're taking some actions. Rick Fisher doesn't seem like an entirely horrible person, but I also think that part of that apology is going to have to go to people like the Snyders, because they're some of the people who were railroaded, trampled upon, crushed under the feet of the tyranny of Jeff Johns' reign at DC. Like this thing, it goes deep, and Ray Fisher is fighting on behalf of a lot of people, not
Well,
just
to that
himself.
point, yeah, to that point, I mean, I think fans would want to see an apology from all these people, to
Absolutely,
all the people that were wrong.
DCEU fans an apology as well. I believe so.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
an apology to all the people, not just to the fans, but I think fans want to see these people that were wronged apologize too. Like
Yeah.
I as a fan would like to see the Snyders apologized to by Jeff Johns, Joss Whedon, uh, John Berg, Toby Emmerich, and
Hmm.
when Ray Fisher talks about people, like he mentioned the one person that called him to apologize. I believe that's I think they were still employed. Well, let me see the exact quote. He said, others, including an implicated individual that already called me or that called me to apologize, have already been interviewed. He did mention current and former employees in one of his quotes. So there are still people there. And, I have to believe it's Emmerich that he's talking about. I mean, Hamada was a late comer to all this, right?
Hmm.
Emmerich
I don't even know.
was,
I don't even know why he stuck
Mhm.
his head into the whole thing. Like, dude, you could have just stayed on the sidelines and just stayed in your lane and just play your role. Like, why?
why
Like,
come out to defend Jeff
yeah,
Johns?
the level of hubris, it must have been like, you know what, guys, I got this, okay? And he stuck his leg into a whole pile of shit, and things got worse for him.
Well, you know
Oh,
what? It sounds like, I mean, he said that based on his experience with Johns on Shazam, he couldn't picture Johns acting that way. Well, maybe because he gave Johns everything he wanted with Shazam.
exactly,
It was a goofy CW level comedy brought to the big
exactly, and
screen, which is
maybe
exactly what
also
Johns has wanted since the beginning. So of course he
also
was
because
fucking
at
pleasant,
that
you
point,
know?
he was John's boss, right? John's had been ousted as DC
Yeah,
film
that's
chief.
true.
Yeah. So John's wasn't going to be lording over him, or doing all this like shit like I'm the fucking man. Um, you know, and even Ray Fisher actually said that Hamada said something to the effect of Jeff Johnson is an asshole and he has no future in my DC films.
Mhm.
Do,
Mhm.
do, do you do you know that quote?
No,
No,
so,
I didn't.
so Hamada
No.
Oh,
Hamada said that about
you
no
haven't
no
seen
no
that.
not Jeff Johns, Joss Whedon. He said about Joss Whedon, not
He
about
said
Jeff
Joss Whedon.
Johns.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Joss
Okay.
Whedon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
thanks for correcting me.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
It's
I don't know why Hamada stuck his neck out. Who put him to, whether he volunteered himself, it's hubris, things, and Ray Fisher is like,
if I had to guess, Toby probably told him to make this right for Jeff Johns, because Toby Emmerich, Joss Whedon, and Jeff Johns were the trio that
mhm,
spearheaded this, right? And John Berg obviously as well. But Toby Emmerich was, I mean, all of this really went to shit when Toby Emmerich came on in December 2016. Like
yeah,
that was
that
like a
was the
turning point.
beginning of the end.
So,
Yeah.
so just based on circumstantial evidence, you have to believe that Toby Emmerich came in and replacing Greg Silverman, and probably said, I know what needs to be done here, and gave Johns the power to go ahead and do what took place over the next few months, right? Like so,
You know,
I'd have to believe that Emmerich is a problem here. Like I mean, I don't know. I guess if I was in Ray Fisher's, both from Ray Fisher's point of view and from the perspective of a fan, I would like to see an apology from Jeff Johns, Joss Whedon, John Berg. I mean, Johns and Berg can apologize together if they want. Write a joint apology letter to all the people they wronged, including the fandom. I think we need to see something from Warner Brothers, including
Mm-hmm.
Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Joss Whedon should just crawl into his hole and stay there, which is pretty much what he's done, right? So. I don't think Joss Whedon. I don't get the sense he's a good person, nor do I get the sense that he really cares. You know, he got his payday. I just think he needs to go away. But the other people should issue apologies, and Whedon should just probably not be heard from again, right? So, although he does actually, he's got that series coming out on, is it HBO Max or HBO? If that actually happens,
does he?
He does. Well, does he? That's a good question.
A lot of these things you hear, they're soft landings for people. That's the Hollywood way, for people who have failed at something but they never materialize. So for example, Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, you're never going to see that. That's never ever ever.
Well, are we sure he's not involved in the Berlanti Green Lantern? Are we positive of that?
Well, he was supposed to have his own Green Lantern.
His own Green Lantern movie, right? And then Berlanti got the series instead.
Yeah, he was supposed to have his own 100% Green Lantern. So that's 100% not coming out. And then with this Joss Whedon thing, remember when he was supposed to do Batgirl? That didn't happen. And then this also, especially with these allegations, it's not going to happen. If we're thinking about things that people may not want to happen, I think that Ray Fisher may be determined that Jeff Johns is not a producer in Hollywood anymore.
Well, and maybe
that goes back to comics and that sort of thing.
I think there's a bigger picture here too. If you look at it beyond DC and all of this too, Warner Brothers is an old studio. They've been around for a very long time, with a big history. But this kind of crap has been going on in Hollywood forever. And you got guys like David Fincher when he first starts out, and he won't even talk about with Alien 3 anymore. It's just even heavy hitters like Ridley Scott have talked about how stuff that he wanted has been ripped apart, whether it's by studio executives, the suits, creative differences, and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that some of this stuff has been ingrained in Hollywood culture forever, let's say, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. And I know part of this is the creative process, and I understand it. By the way, we say it all the time, and one of the things that I think we all forget, not just the three of us, everybody, we forget it is the movie industry. It is an economy. If they decide to shoot the next X-Men movie up in Montreal, like the last couple of them, Montreal gets an economic boom for a little while they're up there. So it's like that kind of stuff. It's very important. So there's a lot of moving pieces, the studio, the distribution company, whatever it is, there's all these missing pieces. But that doesn't necessarily mean that all the shit that was accepted is correct. So if at the end of the day, forget, even with the apologies or whatever, if this sheds some light in some of the really nasty crap that goes on behind the scenes, why not? That's a good thing as well. Let this come out. Let it come out that a young guy could get kicked around. Let it come out that they'll do whatever they want to do to, women and stuff like that because, well, they need the money, right? They need the exposure, whatever. So take off your bra, Guys, all that kind of stuff. But sorry,
I got breaking news. Sorry, Christian, I don't mean to cut you off. I got breaking news. In case you think anything is changing, The Wrap 11 minutes ago put out an article by their number one cheerleader, Humberto Gonzalez.
Oh my God.
Justice League star Ray Fisher went on Twitter attack after getting cameo offer in The Flash. And basically the headline on Twitter says that his June Twitter attack was prompted because he was offered only a small cameo role in The Flash, and that
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah,
well, I mean, so that goes back to what we were saying before, like the chilling for.
They're still trying. Well, they're still trying to undermine him. This is Warner Brothers telling their guy Humberto, hey, this. I mean, he's consistently been pushing the Warner Brothers narrative. Whatever Warner Brothers and probably Toby Emmerich wants him to push, he's been pushing. And this is just one. I mean, consistently giving bad information. Snyder Cut is deaded. What was the last thing? The Ben Affleck thing was never going to happen. He's been against He's
let
been
me tell
against the
you.
side of what's right repeatedly, and here he is again undermining Fisher, probably at the direction of Warner Brothers.
So guys, our audience, guys, wonderful
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who listen. I love you guys. Thanks for listening to us on the podcast and engaging with us. You guys are freaking awesome. You're the reason we do this. So we all have, emotional feelings about people, and that's part of the human experience, right? And your experience is valid. If you don't like someone, you just don't like him, period. You don't have to give a fucking reason. I just don't
Sure.
like you, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of us don't like Umberto for reasons, quote unquote, and there are a lot of things that he says that we don't take serious or we discredit because we don't like him. But I can give you clear evidence as to why he is a hack journalist, a pseudo journalist, a speck on the steaming pile of shit that is the worst type of journalism possible, and why you must not listen to him on this.
Lupe,
And
don't hold back or anything. It's not
I
healthy.
and I give you the license to I give you the license to be very critical, verbally, openly, and campaign against him as a journalist in the public sphere, so people know that he has no credibility. When Justice League failed, there was obviously the consequential shakeup of hierarchy. So people are going to get fired, people are going to get moved, blah, 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 boom, boom, boom. That's what happens when something that big bombs. You'll expected it. All the outlets reported that this is how the shakeup has happened. Jeff Johns has been fired. John Berg has been, Jeff Johns has been fired, but he's going to do a Green Lantern, whatever. John Berg has been moved as producer to maybe like the horror division. Diane Nelson, this has happened to her, blah, 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 won't be wolf. Every single one. THR, Variety, Deadline. Umberto wrote the article for the Wrap. And in his entire article, he did not mention anything about Jeff Johns. Mm-hmm. It's some of the most blatantly corrupt, most unethical journalism I've ever seen. And the reason why that was even glaring to me is because I've been following him for a while. I know his narrative, his rhetoric, and he has been a fanboy of Jeff Johns for years. So when you're writing for a trade, and something has occurred and someone has been fired and let go, and you write an entire article listing all the people who have suffered the fallout of this failure, and you intentionally omit one of the biggest players, if not the biggest player. I mean, that's mind-blowing. So what we're witnessing here is one of the most unethically corrupt journalists in the entire entertainment journalism industry. It's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really make a comment, on that. Obviously, so I'll go with what you're saying. Except I've read examples of what you're talking about. So. I like I said, I'm not going to go and I'm not going to say anything, but I've read examples of what you're talking about, so I can't fight you. I can't fight you on it either. So
yeah, the evidence is just there. Basically, someone wrote the entire article about something and omitted someone. That's to me, that's mind blowing. Where are your morals and your ethics? This is not even about what I feel or emotions, or this is ghastly. And this about, as we say, accountability over entertainment. This about what is right and what is wrong. Right. And he's repeating the same things. The evidence is
so
showing the
sorry,
track.
Lupe,
yeah, go ahead.
He's so wrong that it hurts the credibility of the Wrap.
I don't understand.
He's bringing down the credibility of the. You know what? The other thing was, he was the one that came out and said initially that the Snyder Cut, something about them using Whedon's footage, which is where the question, came to Snyder at JusticeCon about would you include Whedon's footage, and he's like, no, it's ridiculous, which of course everybody knows, but this is, I mean, Umberto was pushing that narrative as well. Like he's so wrong about everything. And here he is shilling for Warner Brothers again, and Jeff Johns, presumably, right? Like, and maybe that's for access. Maybe he's trying to curry favor with the studio by trying to support their narratives. But I mean, even if you look at his headline on this article, I'm not sure if you guys have had time to bring it up, but it starts off with the headline that I mentioned, and then the subheader basically says studio hasn't heard back from Fisher's team in months, insiders say. And then when you read the article, if you scroll down a little bit, it says a rep for Fisher sidestepped multiple questions about the Flash offer in terms of timing, size, and the state of negotiations. The actual quote now: Mr. Fisher is and has been under contract with Warner Brothers Pictures since 2014. Mm-hmm. Per the terms of that pre-negotiated contract, the option to include Mr. Fisher as the character of Victor Stone, aka Cyborg, has always rested in the hands of Warner Brothers Pictures. Well, that doesn't sound like sidestepping multiple. I mean, he's not going to give you any more specifics than that, and it sounds like he's under contract, and if he's instructed by the studio to be in the film, he'll be in the film, right? If that's per the terms of the pre-negotiated contract. So, I mean, what more do you want? Do you want him to give you the plot? Tell you how much he's going to be, so. I mean, it seems like they're asking him questions, asking his representation questions he can't answer, and then trying to characterize it as him being evasive, which is not the case at all. They gave them a stock statement saying he's under contract and that Warner Brothers Pictures has the option to include him as the character in the film. Like, what more do you want?
I mean,
but yet they've tried to spin it in a negative way again.
Negotiations are going on. Like, you're not gonna only crazy people talk about negotiations in a public forum with an outside party. I mean, it's Ray Fisher, it's not Kanye West. Like, what the hell are you talking like? But it's just as you said, it's a blatant
it's a spin job.
Yeah.
Well, and they've as we've talked about before, I mean, they did it with the timing of the Frosty announcement, which was fraudulent, which is just head scratching.
Yes, another one.
The Ben Affleck one, Fisher came out and said that the Ben Affleck in the Flash was
supposed to be
fandom, and they brought it out early to undermine him again. And it's subtle ways of undermining him, right? Like they've undermined his credibility by saying that we've tried to talk to him and he won't answer. They didn't attack him; they just undermined his credibility. And then they distract with these other things, like first of all, the first one. What did we just say? The first one. Frosty, then the Batman one, and now you got this shit out here, this false narrative that they've put out to undermine him. Like he's only upset because he didn't like the small cameo he got in the Flash. Bullshit, and you can see through it. But the problem is, the Wrap is a semi-credible publication, becoming increasingly less so, and people are going to run with this and say, "See, look, here it is. He's upset because he didn't." There's a good segment of film Twitter and YouTubers that will take this as fact and say, oh yeah, he's just pissy because he didn't get the part he wanted in the Flash, which is complete bullshit. I mean,
that's it's kind of insidious. I mean, it's really, don't get me wrong, I hope you understand, Paul, I'm not defending it, but it's not a bad way to go. Like that's if you're gonna do it, you're gonna undermine the guy, that's the way to do it. Like it's wow. I mean, it's insidious.
It's smarter than attacking him, right?
Yeah,
they're subtly undermining him, and then they're doing a distract and an undermine. They're not doing a straight up attack, because like you said, Lupe, it's punching down is going to look bad. They're trying to be a little more subtle about it. I mean, you see through it, so you see it as punching down. But I think to most casual observers, they're just trying to set the record straight. Hey, we reached out to him. He didn't want to talk to us. We've got our independent third party. And even this article talks about independent third party hired by Warner Media, which has been dispelled, right? But Umberto's still stating that. So they're still trying to undermine, and they're still trying to distract without punching down. This is the closest thing I've seen to a punch, but it's not coming from Warner Brothers. It's coming from insiders. And Umberto is a known Warner Brothers shill, right? Who's constantly trying to put out their message, which, I mean, I don't think he's doing that out of the goodness of his heart, right? He's doing that to gain favor with someone at Warner Brothers, either Emmerich, Johns, or a collection, or Hamada, or a collection of people. But I have a feeling it's Emmerich, right? So, yeah, or Hamada. Who knows? I mean, who knows how deep it goes, right?
That puts what I'll say is, one thing that people should have learned from this whole Snyder Cut fiasco, observing it going through all the years, is that karma is a bitch and
Mhm.
she bites. Guys, like, don't worry. Like, people are gonna get their just due, whether it's on the good side of justice or on the bad side. I like I am so encouraged, and I know Ray Fisher has this all buttoned up and all sewed up. Like, I have so much faith in him in terms of his process. And as big and bad as Warner Brothers is, because it's going against Warner Brothers, not Warner Media, as big and bad as Warner Brothers is, like, they're only making things worse for themselves. And I'm really proud of Ray Fisher. I will always be in his corner. And if you are, if you're listening to us today, I implore you to do the same. So let's move from talking about some really just annoying Warner Brothers news to, well, other Warner Brothers news, and this time we're talking about Tenet. There's a review of Tenet on our channel. I conducted that review. I hope that you guys listen to it. I think it's like some of my best work, really. I didn't spoil it at all, so if you haven't seen the movie, don't be afraid to watch my review. I think that I set the table and discussed it, in a way that I would have loved to if I hadn't, seen the movie. So we're going to talk about the reception to its release, and I want to hear what you guys think about its performance. If you think it's a failure, if you think it's a success under the circumstances. So Tenet released internationally first, and then it released domestically, and in the US, it's made only $30 million. That's like really low. I would wager that if we were in, if everything was green light and go go go, it would have made close to 100 million. I think so, between 50 and 100, maybe 70 million on opening weekend alone. But in 2 weekends, it made 9.5 million and 6.7, and has made 30 million in total. I think globally it's made about 200 million, or some north of 200 million. It's done better overseas than domestically. So this has kind of been a failure. It's come in even lower than they expected, despite the pandemic. So guys, what do you think? Do you think it was a mistake to release Tenet? Should they have just outright waited and just let it ride? And what do you think that this means for future releases from other Hollywood studios? Let's start with Paul. Let's switch things up a little bit. Paul, what do you think about hearing about Tenet? Are you looking forward to seeing it? What's your mood on the film?
Yeah, no, I am looking forward to see it, and I did listen to your review, and I enjoyed it. So go check out Lupe's review if you haven't listened to it yet. Um, I am looking forward to see it. I checked out local theater times. I considered it. I mean, we're starting to have a little bit of an increase in cases again now that people have sort of relaxed a little bit in the lead up to school starting, and now the kids are back in school. We're starting to see COVID cases climb, and I considered trying to go watch this in IMAX, and I didn't. I ultimately decided not to. That I'll wait, but. It's about what I expected. I didn't think this was going to do well in North America, especially in the US, right? I mean, I wouldn't take the chance in the US. Not a chance. I mean, we have we had at the time, I think, like 25 active cases in an area of over 500,000 people, and I was hesitant, right? So never mind like Florida or some of these other places that are under siege with COVID cases. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, right? So to take that risk for a lot of people. I didn't expect that this would do extremely well. That being said, when I looked at my local theaters, the seats were full in IMAX for most of the shows. There's just so few seats, right? Because everyone's so spaced out that even if the seats were full, you're not going to make a ton of money off these showings. So that also factors into it. But that being said, I don't think this is a mistake. I mean, I think you just got to get these movies out there already because the marketing was done. Like for things like this one, Wonder Woman 84, Black Widow, the James Bond, was it No Time to Die?
Yeah.
I mean, the marketing cycle's run its course. People were hyped for these movies, and now they're waiting, and they're waiting, and they're waiting, and you just got to put them out. And I think the answer for me personally, what I would do is follow up in short order with premium video on demand for the people that aren't willing to go to the theaters yet, and recoup as much of your investment as you can. I mean, lots of businesses are taking lots of losses right now. I'd say recoup what you can through a combination of theatrical and shorten the window to release on premium video on demand, and in these circumstances at least, and recoup what you can. And I mean, it's done all right overseas where maybe there's less restrictions or hesitancy to go to theaters in certain markets. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, these are tough times for a lot of businesses, and they're, I don't think the results are out of line with what I would have expected. So, do it, great, and now give it to me on video on demand so I can watch it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of where I lie on this. I don't know, Christian, what do you think?
Well, it's the studio's between a rock and a hard place here. I don't, you just mentioned Canada where you are. So I live in the States. I'm in the New York City area, and I got to be careful because I'll wind up getting preachy over COVID. And yeah, we've done a very good job of popping, of pushing this down in the number of cases. And I know there's a lot of arguments out there about what the herd immunity threshold is and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know if anybody really knows. The virus has been around for 7 months, so who the hell knows? And, I'm not ready to go into a theater yet. I'm not ready to go into a place that's enclosed with bad ventilation, that I'm going to be sitting with other people, even at 30% capacity or whatever, for a long period of time. Yes, we're going to wear our masks. I understand that and everything. But, I have a wife that's survived a couple of bad surgeries. I have a heart condition myself. I try to take care of myself. I don't know if I necessarily need to be catching this thing and then spreading it to other members of my family. So I'm still doing the best I can at this point to avoid it. I understand many of us may have to get it, and maybe this thing becomes endemic and all this other shit. That's a conversation that we can have on another day. But Paul, as you just pointed out, here it's worse. I don't care what anybody says. It's worse. So this is tough. And, am I going to go into something that could potentially get me canceled because Christopher Nolan is a darling, and I know he's a darling, and he's one of my favorite filmmakers and everything. And I know, he's Warner Brothers. He's one of Warner Brothers' darlings. But man, guys, the push for this fucking thing to go into theaters, and you can't tell me that wasn't spearheaded by him. How many comments did he make about the cinematic experience, and this thing needed to go into theaters, and it's going to save theaters, and it's going to blah, blah, blah. And I know not all that was him, but bro, and his ego, to be his type of person, to be that caliber, your ego is big. I don't care who you are. If you're going to be that type of artist and you're making those kinds of movies, your ego is fucking massive. So I'm sure his ego is out of control. That doesn't mean he's an asshole. It just means he's got a big ego. That's all it means, because he backs what he does, and he believes in what he does, and he loves what he does, and he's passionate, and that's great. But this thought process that this movie was going to be what would save the summer cinematic season and the summer blockbuster, bull. There's too many cases out there, and there's too many people I know that are, yes, we've opened up indoor dining and things like that where I live, but I'd say still 50%, which is a lot of people, are turning around and saying, I don't want to go. I don't want to do it. So just because you open a restaurant, or just because you open a theater, or you can have weddings or whatever, you still got half the people saying, I ain't doing it. So forget the argument of whether or not that's right or wrong. They're just not doing it. They don't feel comfortable. And the North American market is still it's still the biggest market. It's still the market that you want to make the most money in. So is this movie a failure? Like Paul said, I don't know if it is. This is probably the numbers that you would have to expect at this point. It's most likely the numbers that you'd have to expect. But I think the studio is screwed with having their darling, with having Nolan actively pushing for this movie to get into theaters, hammering that this movie's got to go into theaters. I didn't shoot this damn thing for streaming, and I didn't shoot this damn thing to go on a Blu-ray, right? I shot this thing to go into theaters. That's why I did it. And for the love of God, you're going to put it there because I'm going to save the movie industry. Not happening.
We got his way, Christian, and now now let's give the other way a shot, right?
Exactly. You might have a point there, Paul. You might have a point. But
Like,
then again, we're going to get into this in a second with Mulan. Maybe that's not necessarily true either, but you do have a point, and I think it is an argument to be made. You are raising a valid point.
well, I think too that one doesn't necessarily stop the other, right? Like you can
No,
leave
it
this for a
doesn't.
long run, and there's nothing coming down the pipe that's going to kick it out of theaters anytime
Mhm.
soon, right? So you can keep showing this for months. You can
Mhm.
bring it back next year, I guess. I mean, I don't know all the legalities, but I'm assuming
You
if
could.
you wanted, you could put it once COVID's done, you could put it back in theaters for the people that want to see it in theaters but didn't get a chance to. You can put it out on premium video on demand now. I mean, you can. These movies don't cease making money after the first 3 weekends. I mean, under normal circumstances, that's where they make the bulk of their money. But these are unique circumstances, right? Like, I think the length of time over which these movies can make money is going to be greatly extended because there are people that do value the cinematic experience that just aren't willing to go right now. I personally, I would pay for it on premium video on demand now, even though it's been out in theaters. That hasn't lessened my desire to see it. I'll pay for premium video on demand now, and if I like it, I'll go see it in IMAX when I feel safe to go see it in IMAX if I still have the opportunity. So maybe that's not representative of everyone, but I think it's representative of enough people that are fans of films and his films in particular, right? So
I think there
um,
are people. I think you're right. I think there are people that would do that. Like we would not. Like if I get this movie on Blu-ray or it's on demand, that's it. I'm not going to a theater to see a movie that I've already seen. I'm just not going to do it. Like Star Wars gets re-released and shit. Not doing it. Like it just, I'm not going. Like the only time I ever did that was when the special editions came out for the original trilogy, and then, everybody has their opinions on that. But like if all of a sudden the prequels get re-released or something like that, get the hell out of here. No, there's no way I'm going back to the theater to watch those movies, unless you're telling me you're adding like an hour's worth of new material, and that's the only way I'm going to go see it. Then maybe I will. But you do raise a good point. I hope you understand that I'm not poo-pooing what you're saying. I
no, no. I
totally
mean,
think what you're saying.
everyone's perspective is valid, right? It's
No,
I'm curious to see. I'm curious to hear what you think on it as well. Yeah.
no, I totally agree with you. I think that is it's a valid point. I think there are people that would be like, hey, I'd watch this thing on demand now, and maybe not much is really going to get released necessarily over the next, few months to 6 months, let's say. So, okay, you know what? I've seen it already, but I want the theater experience, and Nolan's one of my boys, so I got to go see that movie, and I loved it. Sure,
Well, Christian, to that point, sorry to cut you off. I just want to make one clarification there. I
yeah.
wouldn't do that for a romantic comedy or something that
Oh, I get that.
doesn't command the big screen. But if I were to watch this on premium video on demand and say, oh shit, I get why he thinks this needs to be seen on the big screen, then maybe it's the type of movie I would do that. For most movies, I wouldn't. But if this is truly something that demands to be seen on the big screen, and Lupe, you can speak to that because you've seen it, then maybe I would go to get that experience separately. Under normal circumstances, for a normal movie, I wouldn't. But
Yeah,
certain
Nolan's
movies,
probably one of the few guys
I
that you
would.
could get away with
Yeah,
that, right? Like Nolan's
yeah.
definitely one of those few guys that you can get away with that. I think it's true. There's the other. I'll drop it after this because I probably talk too much, and I apologize, Lupe and Paul, both of you
No,
guys. But I think the other side to this too is probably a public health thing. Now that for some reason gets very political. I don't know why. But theaters, as we just said, the movie industry is an industry. I said that a half an hour ago, whatever, towards the beginning of the podcast. It employs a ton of people. Some of my friends worked summer jobs at the theaters, and that's how they paid for shit, and that's how we were able to go down the beach and meet up with girls and all that kind of stuff. So I understand that that's a huge part. Like that absolutely. However, in areas of high transmission, I'm not necessarily saying in an area that has it kind of locked down and they figured shit out. But in areas of high transmission where community spread is still high, do we need to be saying, hey man, theaters are open 30%, go in there, have fun? Is that the right thing? Like I don't, and it hurts me because the theater experience is a big experience. I love it. It's part of my family. It's my wife and I love movies. It's, like that, there's so much more to going to a movie than just watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to see movies close down forever. And I don't necessarily, Paul and I have been on opposite ends of this a few times. I don't necessarily support everything moving to streaming moving forward. I just don't know if, is it the right time? Like, I understand what Warner Brothers has. I know this is their guy. I know he probably makes a ton of money and he's got a lot of pull there. But there's also a public health conversation here that some of our listeners are probably going to be like, Chris, you're overblowing it. And it's a hoax, whatever.
No,
But that's not good either. What kind of message are we saying? I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole, so I'll shut up. That's it.
All right, let's back it on up a little bit. All right. No, you're 100% right. We got to look at it from every angle. It's not just about the box office and those returns and what it does for the color of our lives in terms of entertainment value. There's also health, you know, there's also the overall message that you're sending out in terms of, you know, collectively, are we sending out a message that's going to be, even if people are not going to the theaters, when they hear a message about it's safe to go to the theaters, and they feel things are safer and they relax a bit more. So there are all these sort of things that we have to, you know, take into consideration. And I'm 100% with you, Christian, in terms of looking at it from the angle of Christopher Nolan's hubris and his ego and this sort of naive, dogmatic tenet about the theatrical experience. So I've seen the movie on a gigantic screen. It wasn't IMAX, but the screen I saw it on is like the next biggest, like most massive screen you can see a movie on in standard non-IMAX format, and it looks amazing. I mean, it's Christopher Nolan. He shoots things with a very sort of epic and large scale perspective. So yeah, it looks fantastic. But if you have a good television at home, and Paul, I know you have an amazing home theater. I have a massive TV. Christian, you also have a big TV. Like a lot of us, we have like TVs that are like, if your TV is bigger than, even I'd say even bigger than, let's say something small. If it's bigger than 32 inches, I think you'll be fine. Honestly, I think you'll be fine, and you will get the grand scale and scope and experience.
What
I
about the
don't
sound,
think
Lupe? Because I've heard people
I didn't have any issues with the sound.
because I've seen a lot of people
However,
complaining.
I will say this, that the movie itself, there's a lot of technical jargon. And I think the problem is that people were trying so hard to really listen and follow every single bit of an astrophysics, theoretical physics lesson. And on your first watch, you're not supposed to be worried too much about the logic and the rationale and all the science. It's too much. It's like listening to Stephen Hawking's lecture, and you're not a physicist and expecting to understand it. You're just not. You just have to enjoy the movie and just feel this weird illogical thing that's going on, and then when you have time to think about it, it begins to make more and more sense. And it's actually quite a simple movie, to be sincere, once you have time. But when you're in it, if you're trying to listen, you'll get lost. I started getting lost. And then, as I say in my review, I remember a character says something to the effect of, don't try to understand it, just feel it. And I just gave myself to the movie, surrendered, and just let it, carry me away. And it was an enjoyable ride. I think people are trying too hard to listen to technical parts of the dialogue instead of just enjoying the movie. It is bombastic, and there's a lot of sound going on and a lot of channels hitting you from different, angles. But I think that's part of the theatrical experience with the movie. I had zero issues with discerning dialogue. Might have been my theater that did something special or whatever, but I also must say that my experience was one of surrendering to the movie and not even trying to understand it. I was absolutely confused after my first view. I had no idea what I'd just seen, how logically all those things work, time going back, forward, this way, and people doing different things. That, like, I just enjoyed it. Then when I got home, I started to think more about it. I got into discussions with other people and then began to unravel it. And it's like, okay, all right, now I understand it. It's quite a simple movie. But when you're watching it, don't try to understand it. Just feel it. Yeah, so with Tenet being a disappointment, I don't want to say Christopher Nolan deserves it or there are many angles to look at it from. I think that Warner Brothers, I think they knew that it wasn't going to do well. But as Christian said, they did it because basically they did it because it's Christopher Nolan. And they kind of calculated it like this. All right, we're going to lose money on this, okay? But you know what we're going to gain? Christopher Nolan is going to owe us for life.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, in the future, he is, when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to where he calls his home, he's going to be like, you know what? During that time when I was bullish on putting Tenet in theaters, even though it was a huge risk and it was going to lose money, these guys, they stood behind me. So I'm going to stand behind them forever on whatever it is. So expect him to direct The Dark Knight 4. All right, so let's pivot from Tenet's disappointing box office. I mean, before we go forward, I just want to ask you guys. So, what do you think that this means for releases? We've already seen Wonder Woman 84 has been postponed to Christmas Day from the end of October. Pardon me. So, what do you guys think that this means for movies in general? I mean, there are a lot of movies that are still scheduled to be released in theaters. What do you think that this says? So briefly, just Paul, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think, like I said, I think the model's got to shift until this is under control, until we have a vaccine and this pandemic has mostly subsided across the world. I think they've got to be flexible and give people an option, because there is a significant segment of the population that is just not willing to go to theaters to watch movies right now.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to try and show these things theatrically, and then sure, if theaters can be open in those specific areas, do that, but also give people a premium video on demand option. The only thing I can't necessarily speak to is we don't get transparency with premium video on demand to know how much money they're making on this versus how much money would they make if they waited. And I mean, that's speculative as well, right? If you were to say, well, let's hold Tenet off another year and like we'll release it next fall when we're sure everything's hopefully things are under control, right? How much will they have lost in just lost anticipation, lost excitement, lost buzz, restarting a new marketing campaign? So I mean, there's a lot of numbers, a lot of math that has to go into this, and we're not privy to a lot of the information we would need to make an educated decision from a financial perspective. But I have to think that for some of these movies, you just have to put them out, and you have to negotiate to allow premium video on demand sooner rather than later, if not simultaneously. I mean, things like Bill and Ted have offered simultaneous theatrical and premium video on demand. Who knows how much premium video on demand actually cannibalized the theatrical release? I mean, as a consumer, my preference is to have both options. From a studio perspective, if I was in charge, I might say let's give it 3 weeks in the theater before we put these things on premium video on demand, if we can negotiate that kind of deal. But I think that's where it has to go until this is resolved. I don't think you can hold things off forever. There's an appetite for content. You just have to get it to people. And then the other big piece of this is piracy. And I don't have any hard numbers on piracy for any of these titles that have gone to premium video on demand, but you have to believe that eats into like half their market, if not more, based just anecdotally on the idea that Game of Thrones, I think, was about 50-50 legitimate viewings versus pirated viewings, estimated pirated viewings, I'm guessing. So they're losing a huge chunk to piracy, but I don't know that they're going to have an answer for that anytime soon. So maybe it's just a cost they're willing to accept. But you got to put the content out and make the best of it. I think you can't just keep holding stuff off forever. So that's where I fall in this. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Okay. So just to wrap that up, your advice, your proposition is have it in theaters and on streaming at the same time. Is that what you think, or do you advise 3 weeks in theaters and then like a very short theatrical window, and then quickly to
so what I think makes sense is you put it in theaters and you leave it in theaters, and after 3 weeks you also put it on premium video on demand. So there's some incentive to get people out to theaters, but for those that aren't willing to go, you get it within a reasonable amount of time frame to participate in what's seen as the launch.
Okay, all right. Christian, what's your proposal?
Paul brings up a lot of good points, and I think the pipeline, by the way, of movies that are in production and what's coming up also has something to do with that as well. A lot of movies had been paused. A lot of movies were just not even bothering. They weren't starting. They're punted until 2021. That's when the production will begin. You saw what just happened with the Batman, where Pattinson wound up being the guy that was supposedly tested positive, and that shuts down that particular. I mean, it's just whatever. So I think that has something to do with it as well. I think that, look, if you gotta go with one of two things. You either have to go with a hybrid, like Paul said, or you got to punt. That's really it. Doubling down on theater right now and getting stuff into cinema is, I think it's a losing proposition. So if you're going to double down right now and say cinema is where I'm going to try to make my money, when you have far too many areas of, at least my country in America, you have far too many areas in my country that are at 30%, some are at 50%. Even China is still only at 50% capacity in their theaters. It's a losing proposition at this point. So you have to fundamentally make that decision. Okay, I have a $150-200 million movie that's packaged and ready to go. Am I going to punt? And am I going to just wait until I think that I can get everybody back in? I'm going to actually make a statement here and say that the public health is more important, and that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to move everything forward, and this is a cinematic experience, and I'm going to wait until we all feel healthy and we've gotten this thing behind us, or at least controlled, let's say managed, and then we're going to move forward. Or you do a hybrid, the way Paul said. But if you do that, you probably better expect that you are losing money, and you better build that in, because it's going to happen. You're either going to lose money to piracy, because Mulan was fucking up within like a half an hour, according to social media. Mulan was ready in 30 minutes to be downloaded on pirating sites. So if, Reddit and Twitter is to be believed. So that was bang, right away out there. And the numbers that he said about 50% Game of Thrones, I've read those same numbers. So he's probably right. So that's something that they have to consider as well. You will absolutely get some people that are going to be going for the theater experience because they want it, they need it, they trust it, they feel good in wearing their masks or whatever it is, and they're okay. But a lot of people don't feel that way. So if a movie still has some time, I think you have a little bit of time to think about what you want to do, because it's still in the pipeline and it's still in production. But if it's packaged and ready to go, those are really your only two options. You either punt, like it looks like Black Widow is probably going to get punted at this point, or you say, you know what, I'll put it into theaters for a little bit, and then it's going on demand after about 3 weeks, and I got to take my licks. Because even with Tenet, if you use that as an example, yeah, people are excited and stuff like that, but we are such an ADHD culture, man. We are an ADD, instant gratification culture, and I guarantee by the end of the year, people are going to be like, Tenet, that movie came out, whatever. Like, that's how people are.
Yeah.
We're terrible like that.
Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is that the opening weekend numbers are usually like, people don't really, because they're like Star Wars numbers, we kind of lose perspective. Those are explosive numbers, and it's just because of the buzz, the hype, the anticipation of a new release that dissipates very, very quickly, and it's very, very much contingent on the newness, the freshness of the product. So the longer it stays in theaters, the more lethargic people are about seeing it, the more patient they are for it to come out on streaming options. So the strategy that they're taking with Tenet, which is to give it this marathon theatrical release, I don't think it's going to be as successful as they want, because from a starting spot, the opening weekend 9 point something million, and then the next weekend had a steep drop off, We'll see, because the other territories are going to open, and I guess there won't be as many things in theaters. But the thing is that people are not chomping at the bit to go to theaters.
Yeah.
This is not like bars and restaurants and holidays. People are chomping at the bit to do those things, to have those experiences. But nobody chomps at the bit to go to theaters, really, apart from if you're like a cinephile and a nerd for movies and stuff like that. People go to theaters because there is an exciting movie. They don't just go because, let's just go on whatever is in there. We're gonna go see it. So people aren't like chomping at the bit to go to theaters, and by the time your movie's already stale, it's they can spend their time doing something else. So I think that the best strategy actually would be what Paul proposed, and the reason why is because you've already sunk marketing costs into a lot of these movies. So if you delay the movies, that's going to balloon your marketing costs. And for blockbusters, marketing is very expensive. Like, think about how many billboards they have in your city alone. Think about them having billboards in major cities worldwide. That is millions of
Yeah.
dollars. Like, so,
Well, some
you're
estimates say
talking
it's
about
double the cost of the production,
the
right, for some of
production.
these
Yeah,
blockbusters, right?
yeah. You're talking of a situation where like basically all that money you spent has gone down the drain. You're gonna basically have to start to ramp up and build up that excitement from scratch again, whenever it is that you start. So, are you willing to take that loss or just put it in theaters? Like, so there's no rocket science to this. I think that one thing that a lot of these studios really need to take advantage of is their streaming platforms, because the gains that you get from attracting people to your streaming platforms are longer. So you're not just gaining just that initial um like fixed cost of you know of somebody just buying or renting something. Like, you're hoping that they're going to be a lifelong subscriber to your streaming service after they've been on there and explored and seen how good it is. So I think that studios who have movies that are going to release during this period, they really, if they have streaming services, they need to do everything in their might and their power to attach these movies to that. Now, you may be taking a bit of a financial hit, but I think the long-term financial benefits will make up for it. Now, the problem is that who are these finances going to? Because you have investors, and the investors in the film might not be investors in your streaming service. So I guess it'll be up to accountants or whatever to divert funds based on who's subscribing because of something, and find a way, maybe loan money from your streaming service to the investors, and that way you get your payment for that diversion of funds through your streaming service. So anyway, yeah, I mean that was a long deep dive
Yeah.
discussion. Warner should probably have hired us to give him a presentation. Um, I truly believe that after their fiasco with Ray Fisher, they will start listening to us every week because
Damn right.
we give them good advice. All right, on to the next one. Another major release. This one's Mulan, and this one took more of the multi pronged approach that Paul is such a fan of. Released both theatrically and on streaming. They opened up um, a new part of their platform in Disney Plus to offer movies to Disney Plus subscribers, and it's also not had the best of results. Let's put it that way. Couple that with the fact that there's a lot of political controversy that the movie's embroiled in. Also, the movie is made for Chinese audiences, and I think it was made really to be a Chinese blockbuster. Their idea was that they will rival the biggest, Chinese movies that have grossed, like hundreds of millions of dollars in China. However, it has been roundly rejected by Chinese audiences, and actually the box office numbers are actually like really, really, really poor, despite the pandemic. So, guys, what do you think of Mulan's release? If you've seen the film, tell us what you thought about the film, and what do you think of this strategy as opposed to the one for Tenet? And what do you think the unique path that the film has traveled? What do you think what's your response to that?
Well, I'll let Paul because he saw the movie. So after I'm done, I'll let him. I know he can talk about the actual movie itself. So full disclosure, I have not. My wife and I are gonna wait to see it until you can watch it in December. Which, by the way, is another questionable strategy, I guess, if you're looking about making money, if that's what you're into. I already looked at it and I have not really been a fan of the Disney remakes outside of Beauty and the Beast. So I just and I was excited about this, as you guys know, but I wasn't about to drop $30 on it, and it was when I knew it was coming out in December anyway. So I was like, okay. So, and they took a little bit of a different path than the hybrid that Paul is suggesting, because in North America, at least, it's being released through Disney Plus with Disney Premier Access, I believe is what it's being called. So instead of doing like a hybrid where it would be out in theaters for a couple weeks here and then it gets released on Disney Plus, it's Disney Plus, it's streaming here. And although you did get that theatrical release, Lupe, as you mentioned, out in China, and the blowback is the reviews have been interesting. I mean, look, I remember it was a year ago. Alan Horn, who's co-chair of Disney Studios, said in a quote, "If Mulan doesn't work in China, we have a problem. It didn't work in China. You have a problem." So, and this is different than like Kung Fu Panda, which, by the way, China loves Kung Fu Panda because it's made up and it's stupid and it's fun and it's adventurous and it's just okay. Mulan is totally different. Totally different. Like, she's a legendary heroine that they would have learned about in school. You don't mess with that. And some of the reviews that I think the three of us have all seen, said that it was way too westernized. They doubled down on a couple of things that they should not have doubled down on. So this was an interesting strategy for them, and I kind of feel, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll throw it to Paul after this, is that I think it was experimental for them. They got a lot of big movies coming down the pike. We just mentioned Black Widow before. They got that movie Soul, and as of now, quote unquote, they're saying that those movies are remaining in theaters. But the rumors are whispering this morning that that's not going to happen. That at least it's going to get punted. At least it's going to get punted. So their original release dates are not holding. So is there a possibility? I don't know. I mean, Disney can't think they can go back to this strategy now. I'll let Paul speak to the numbers that we looked at before and the increase in quote unquote subscribers or downloads of the app, as well as the amount of money that was spent, although there's really no other place to spend money in the app except if you want to buy this one movie. Some people are month to month, so I believe that that's where they're spending money. I'm on a yearly, so I paid ahead of time. I don't know if this strategy was right either, but then again, there's other things at play here. There's a whole bunch of politics. The lead actress making her comments about Hong Kong and supporting the suppression. The issues with Muslims being placed in concentration camps in China and things like that. So there's a lot of which we don't have to go into because it's way too politically hot. So we don't have to get into those things. So I think Mulan was in a little bit of a different place than a movie like Tenet or a movie that, like you had mentioned Bill and Ted before. So it's in a little bit of a different place than those movies, I think. And of course, Disney is always going to be put under a little bit more of a microscope because it's the biggest distributor right now. They're the bully. So they're the empire, if you will. I don't know the answer to your question, though, Lupe, if this was a success or not. I think when you look at it, you have to say it wasn't. Just when you look at the pure numbers, it's a $200 million film that barely broke that kind of money over in China. I don't think it's a success. I really don't. I think Disney has to look at this as not only a failure because of the blowback that they've received, but they have to look at it as a failure because to say, okay, if they're going to push people to their streaming platform and going back to your previous point, maybe then you could say, yeah, it was a win from that perspective. They're pushing people to their streaming platform. They're already, they're over 55 million subscribers. So maybe it worked from that respect, but I've seen a lot of negativity online with this movie, guys. I really have. So I don't know if this is a win for them. And you're probably guaranteed $800 million if it goes into the theaters and you wait a little while. Now, look what happened. So I don't know, unless streaming's the future. So I'll throw it to Paul. I'm not sure if this is a success. To me, you got to look at it as a failure right now, at least just as a snap judgment.
Yeah, so Christian, I think I agree with you that this was an experiment. I think they actually said that in advance, that this was going to be a bit of an experiment for them to see. Right. And they're trying to probably work out the price point and the model, and I think they came up with some interesting ideas. I would say that, it has to be a disappointment. And the number that shocked me is not so much the 23 million in China over the weekend, which, I guess has to be a little bit disappointing for them, seeing that this was so geared towards, or at least targeted at, a Chinese audience. And I think it was, at least based on what you're hearing in the media and, from some other people that have seen it, like Fiona in particular, posted online that she called it the General Tso's chicken of filmmaking. Lupe, you can correct me on that quote, but it seems to have disappointed that audience. But the number that really shocked me was the spend numbers that they quoted. So if we look at the numbers that they're quoting, they said that the Disney consumer spending on the Disney Plus app climbed 193% to 12 million compared with a week earlier. So that tells us that a week earlier they made roughly 4 million in spending, which, seeing that there's nothing to purchase on the Disney Plus app other than the monthly subscription itself, it tells you they were getting the week before about $4 million from either weekly or annual subscriptions. Now 193% increase, so let's call it 200% increase on 4 million. You add another 8 million, you get your 12 million. So they get 8 million the week Mulan comes out. So a portion of that is still new subscribers that they probably would have got anyway, or annual subscriptions, which they may or may not have got anyway. And then the remainder is due to this $29.99 US fee for Mulan. Or in Canada, we paid $34.99 plus tax, came out to $39.54 for my Mulan purchase, which is a bit steep, especially when you consider the model they're putting out, because you don't own this thing. What you have is basically a rental of up to 3 months, assuming you continue your subscription. Otherwise, you lose it. And then you would have got it anyway for your monthly fee after 3 months. And they told people that right before it came out. They basically said, stream it now for $29.99 or watch it when it comes to Disney Plus on December 4th, which might have actually cannibalized their sales a little bit, because if they didn't tell people that, you don't have an assurance that it's going to be free for everyone on December 4th. When I say free, I mean free with a standard Disney Plus membership. If they don't tell you that, I mean, for all we know, maybe they would have made you wait 6 months, right? That might have incentivized more people to pay the $29.99 in US. But like you said, that influenced your decision. If you heard mediocre reviews and you could get it for free with your membership in 3 months anyway,
right?
Maybe you don't spend that $30, right? I went out of my way to spend the money because I wanted to support this method of distribution, and I have a 9-year-old daughter who has been raised Disney, right? We've watched all the Disney animated movies repeatedly. We've watched all the Disney live action stuff when it comes out. Mm-hmm. This was a family event in my house. So I was going to purchase this. Now, that being said, piracy is also an option, right? And I actually had buffering issues on Friday night, and I'll tell you, the thought crossed my mind that a nice clean download with no buffering issues might have been nice, rather than spending $40 on a
we didn't hear that
movie.
We didn't hear that. We didn't
on a movie that we actually had to stop because of buffering issues, and then we went back later, and I reset my Roku stick, and I didn't have any buffering issues after that. So whether or not the issue was my own Roku stick or my own Wi-Fi, or whether it was something with volume on the site, I don't know. But regardless, I had issues because I was streaming it, regardless of where the breakdown occurred, as opposed to, as I say, like a download that doesn't have those kind of issues, right? So, yeah, it's you gotta kind of believe in this model to want to spend that money. Like, that's a big chunk of change, unless you're sharing it with other people, like you're having a group gathering, which you're probably not doing right now with COVID, or at least you probably shouldn't be, or you're sharing your subscription with other people, which I know some people do. But I mean, that obviously limited their sales. So if they only got 8 million, and that's generous, in additional sales because of I should say they had 12 million, they had 4 million the week before, so we can say that 8 million bump is from Mulan, minimum 8 million bump is from Mulan, plus whatever new subscribers they obtained because of Mulan and retain on a monthly or annual membership, because the sneaky thing is, of course, you lose your purchase the minute you cancel your subscription. So this isn't really a transferable subscription. This is a transferable purchase. This is a purchase that lasts only as long as you keep your subscription, which, as you accumulate a library, is really going to lock you in. Like, if you've paid $30 for early access to 5, 6, 7 of these movies over time, and if you cancel your $7.99 a month subscription, you're going to lose all those movies. That's going to lock you in, right? You're going to say, I better pay my $8 so I keep these 5 movies, probably, right? Although, that incentive even goes away over time, because once all those movies are free to regular members, then you can cancel your subscription and come back, and those movies are still there for everyone anyway. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It's got to be disappointing financially, because these numbers don't usually go up with time. They usually go down. So if you've got 8 million in new revenue on the streaming service, plus 23 million in China, on a $200 million budget plus marketing, that's not good, right?
Yeah,
so,
and it's how much are you making back on those? We don't need to go down this too much longer, but it's just how much you making back on your monthlies. I think exactly what you're saying is 100% true. Their model is interesting. Let's say they decide to do this for, I don't know, 5 more movies. So you spend $30 on each one of those. They sit in your Disney online vault, whatever the hell you want to call it. But then if you decide to cancel, I mean, if you had that movie on Blu-ray, you have it on Blu-ray. But if you decide to cancel, okay, I guess your access to those movies are gone, because they haven't said that when you paid for premiere access, quote unquote, you're getting that movie forever. It can get transferred to your Movies Anywhere account, or it gets transferred to your Amazon account. No, it's sitting in your Disney Plus account. So if you decide to leave,
It's gone.
like Apple. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Like Apple, you're locked into their damn ecosystem when you get into them. So it's, like Google too, all of them. I mean, that's what these companies want to do. They want to lock you into their ecosystem. So maybe it's smart, maybe it's not. But right now, I just think you raised a couple of good points about where this goes.
And I think there was a lot of people that resented that model and pushed back against it and refused to support it because they thought it was shady.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that could have had an impact as well. I won't take up any more time because I kind of rambled on that piece. I'll give you guys my quick thoughts on the movie itself. I did see it. It is mediocre. It's there's some really for not to go down the color road, but there is some nice use of color in the film. The cinematography, the cinematography is good.
Is it fun though?
Oh, it's not fun enough. It needed more jokes. Always more jokes, right? But the plot, it was a shallow film. It's a kids movie. It didn't have any depth. I don't typically like the term Mary Sue, and I don't think it applies to a lot of the characters where I've heard it used. But oh my God, if there was ever a poster child for Mary Sue's in a film, this is it. It's you don't feel there's any struggle. The director herself came out before the movie and said that she really wanted to lean into the acrobatics of the fighting. Well, she did, and it was ridiculous in scenes. She has a go-to move that just took me out of the movie.
Mortal Kombat.
So it's not a terrible movie, but this is a simple movie for a family audience geared towards kids under 10 or kids under 12, let's say. And if you're looking for something with some depth and emotion, you're not going to get a lot of that out of this. This is it's disappointing on that front. It's a mediocre entry in the Disney live-action catalog. It's not terrible. It's fine. I'm not in a rush to rewatch it. And if you're looking for something more than that, you're probably going to end up disappointed. I'll leave it at that. Lupe, sorry if I've rambled on. No. If you're still awake, I don't hear any snoring, although you're hanging on by a thread.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I don't really have anything to add to the conversation. I think you guys exhausted every single possibility, and that was a rich one. I'll watch Mulan soon. To be sincere, I was very excited about it. Yeah. I can't lie, but the more I heard about what it was from different people with different perspectives, I've come to the consensus that it's not something that I should be so hyped about.
And I'll leave with high expectations, you're disappointed. If you go with low, you might.
Yeah.
You might not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, going from some Disney news to more Disney news, and this one is about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They have cast Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror, and this gentleman is having a hell of a year, while the rest of us are struggling in 2020. But do you, bro? Do you? He starred in The Five Bloods, one of the highlights of the film. He also is starring in HBO's Lovecraft Country, and he has been cast as Kang the Conqueror to be a villain in Ant-Man 3. So I don't know too much about this character. I'd like to yield my time to Christian, our Marvel expert, to school us on what this means.
Yeah, you're right. Jonathan out there living his best life, right? While we're stuck in the COVID event. But I have nothing but congratulations for him. I think this is great. I won't go too deep down this because I don't want to bore anybody who's not an MCU fan. But also there's not a ton to talk about quite yet, but it does have ramifications for the future on where they want to go. And you alluded to this earlier, Lupe. Regardless of how you may feel about the MCU, whether you love it or hate it, they've had villain issues. And outside of Thanos and you said the Winter Soldier, there really hasn't been too many great villains. Loki is fantastic, but you can even have the argument that he's not a villain at this point.
Yeah. Let's not forget Alexander Pierce.
well, Pierce is, I would actually agree with Pierce. I think was great. And and played, of course, by a great actor. But it's, I would definitely say that they have an issue. I mean, is it Malekith, and you could go down the list. They're very forgettable within the MCU, and they're usually one and done. And they get in, they die, and that's the end of it. You don't really care about them anymore. So they have an opportunity here. Now, Kang the Conqueror is a frequent adversary of the Avengers and also the Fantastic Four. And as you guys know, with the acquisition of Fox Studios, regardless of whether we agree with that, Fantastic Four and the X-Men will become full MCU properties moving forward. And Fantastic Four are considered the first family of Marvel. And they always have been. And, they've been adapted a number of times to ranging success or failure, depending upon how you look at that. And, I think people are thinking it's time to potentially introduce them into Marvel, into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this may be the way to do it. Ant-Man 3 is an interesting place to pop them. But anyway, just to tell you about Kang, in a nutshell, he has a very long and a very complex history within Marvel. He does. His name is Nathaniel Richards. Remember that name. Technically, he's from the 31st century. He discovers a little bit of time travel technology that was developed by Dr. Doom, and using some time travel shenanigans, which has long been part of Marvel. They've always been screwing around with that kind of stuff. He goes back into the past. And also at one point, he is the Pharaoh Ramatut. He's the Pharaoh Ramatut. And he is the precursor and tries to bring on board En-Sabah-Nur. And if you guys know who En-Sabah-Nur is, he is Apocalypse. So he is a huge part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel comic universe. So Kang the Conqueror then winds up jumping around multiple times. He's the Scarlet Centurion, the Immortus. He's the Iron Lad, I believe, at one point. They even call him. But he heads back to the future. He overshoots his own century, ends up on a war-torn Earth like 1,000 years later on. He renames himself Kang the Conqueror, and he uses advanced weaponry to dominate Earth and that whole section of the galaxy that Earth is in. And all kinds of insanity ensues. So that's kind of a very simplistic way of saying who Kang the Conqueror is, but he's an interesting character in his own right. Now, the reason I think that this is pretty fascinating is that the Ant-Man movies, both of them, have been pretty fun side adventures in the MCU. They've been heist movies. They've really been very light. Both movies have been very light. The heaviest part of both movies was the post-credit scene of Ant-Man 2, which introduced the quantum realm and everything. So that was really the heaviest that we ever got in the Ant-Man movies. They've always been a very family-friendly, just very light, fun movies. Interesting in their own way, but nothing that really affects the overall MCU outside of Pym particles, things like that, which are a big part of the comics as well. To introduce him into Ant-Man 3 says that they want to do something much larger in Ant-Man. Now Ant-Man is definitely going to be part of the Avengers moving forward. The old class is on the way out. We know that. So this new group is going to be a part. Maybe they're going to bring together the young Avengers. I don't know. Let's not go down that rabbit hole either. But the point is they obviously want to make Ant-Man 3 a little bit different, and they want to make it a little bit more of a focal point. They also want to have the next big bad. And Kang could be the person to do that because they have suffered from a villain problem. And if Thanos is truly dead, they don't really have another villain that they've set up that could be a big bad in the MCU. And Kang could be that, and he brings other aspects to his personality because when he's Nathaniel Richards, he's more of an adventurer instead of being an evil guy. Kang the Conqueror is a little bit different. I asked you to remember the name Nathaniel Richards because of Reed Richards. Reed Richards, the founder of the Fantastic Four. He's not the descendant. Nathaniel Richards is not the descendant, as many people think. When he went back in time, it's possible that he's the father of Reed Richards. So what does all this mean? Are they introducing the Fantastic Four? And if they are, is the father of the Fantastic Four, is the head of the Fantastic Four, now going to be a person of color? That could be really interesting as well. They tried to do that once before with Johnny Storm, and Trank, regardless of whether you liked his movie, got racial blowback for that garbage too. For some reason, people fucked with him and said, I don't know why they did that, but Michael B. Jordan is a phenomenal actor, and who cares? Shouldn't even matter. But I think they have an opportunity here to do it one more time, and maybe this time, if they set it up, and he's the father of whatever the first family of the MCU, I think that's a very unique way for them to do it. And and bringing in an actor of his caliber as well. Think about that too. That's another big thing. I mean, there's been actors and actresses that have passed through the MCU. Some of them are really, like Chris Hemsworth has really come into his own, and Hiddleston is very good as Loki. Bringing him in there you got another actor of a really heavy duty caliber, as well as maybe introducing this whole new family line in the MCU. I just see that there's a lot of positive here with this. A lot of this is a little too early to speculate on. I don't expect either one of you guys to be really as excited as I am about it, but I just think that there's so much that they can do here moving forward. But we are still very, very much at the beginning. But Doctor Doom and the Fantastic Four could possibly be coming into play here, and you could be looking at a villain that is very nuanced and has far-reaching implications for the future of the MCU and potentially the father of the first family of the MCU, of Marvel, if you will. So that's where I stand on it. So that's my excitement for it.
Yeah, so it sounds exciting if it's well done. I mean, I don't trust Marvel, so there's that. When you tell it, it sounds fucking epic and like they can.
I was
do
just
some
thinking the same thing. I enjoyed
badass stuff, but coming from the fun and colors factory, I don't know.
I enjoyed listening to Christian's version a lot more than I think I'll enjoy the actual theatrical version.
Absolutely. I mean, the only perspective that I would bring to this is as a, well, I mean, I guess it no longer holds too much water, but I just hope he's not wasted. Like he's someone that I respect a lot as a young actor.
Yeah.
I think he has a lot of potential. I just kind of get disappointed with the way Marvel plucks these young, talented artists and puts them in their commercial machine. There's just something about it that rubs me the wrong way. If you know what I mean, it's kind of like an underground artist, like, you know, an underground, I don't know, singer or rapper or, you know, and then there's this massive, shiny major label who, you know, plucks them from, you know, their very esoteric artistic ways. And, you know, I don't know, like a lot of people that have gone on to work for Marvel, it's just been a disappointment to me. For example, like Chiwetel Ejiofor is my favorite actor. He's actually my favorite actor in the entire world, and seeing him in Doctor Strange and then like Idris Elba, obviously stuff that's happened with John Boyega, also Lupita Nyong'o. She's someone I think the world of her. I think to me I think she's like on the level of, you know, the Jennifer Lawrences and the greatest young actresses we have, and then they're in these sort of roles that don't have so much like teeth to them. Like I like to see people like Jonathan Majors in your more dramatic DC movies, or even the stuff that Fox was doing with stuff like Logan, and you know, and you know, that kind of, so that's the only perspective that I have, and I'm like, oh, they're getting another, you know, good, you know, young artists and dumping them in this commercial.
Can I say too that I think that for so many reasons, it's why it's such a fucking tragedy that Chadwick Boseman was taken from us as early as he was, because regardless of how some people feel, I understand that some people don't hold Black Panther in as high regard as I do. But I also know from speaking with some of my friends how important it was for that movie to get made, to make as much money as it did, to get the exposure that it did and everything. But Chadwick he wanted to bring so much to that role. Like there was discussion behind the scenes about what T'Challa's accent was going to be. And they went deep, man. And they were saying, like, at one point they were like, well, maybe we should just have him have his regular American accent, but nah, you know what, why don't we do the British accent? No one's going to understand the African accent, whatever. And Chadwick fought for that. He turned around and said, look, I understand the history. If I have a British accent, well, now that's going to reinforce the colonization aspect of it. You can't do that. He said Wakanda is supposed to be free. We're supposed to be above that. Now, if I turn around and I speak in like a Chicago accent, well, what does that mean? Their education is shit, so I had to go to a university in the United States? No, it doesn't work that way. He understood that, yes, it was a Marvel movie, but it represented something completely different. The loss of Chadwick is horrible for so many reasons. And
Absolutely.
my wife and I were crushed, and people are like, how could you be crushed? Why? Because if you've seen the videos of that man and what he was doing with children, and the way oh my God, he was so into it, and he understood the background, the history, everything. It's I don't think Kang is going to be a T'Challa. I don't, but it is possible that it leads into something else, and that's why I mentioned that that if the line is directly to him, if Nathaniel Richards, if they're really going to say it's Reed Richards, and the first family will have a Reed Richards that is a person of color, I think there's a chance that it's not just something that's a virtue signal. I think it could be something different. It's possible, at least. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying it's possible. I think you're right.
I mean, that would be dope, but oh my God, we are gearing up for another war.
I know, and that's why I'm so hurt by Boseman's passing. And anyway, I'm sorry.
2020 has just been. It started with Kobe, and everything just fell apart.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, like the list of people who mean so much to us in terms of our pop consciousness and the way that we relate to ourselves in terms of entertainment, storytelling, and the hyper real. It's been mind blowing, just way too many people. 2020 something else. The Grim Reaper is having a year.
That bastard.
All right, well, Paul, do you have anything to say on this topic?
No, I mean, I honestly don't know. I got an education from listening to Christian. I enjoyed what he had to say, but I haven't even seen the last Ant-Man. I haven't seen Endgame. I haven't seen the last Spider-Man. I'm checked out of the MCU. If my daughter decides she wants to start watching them, maybe we'll rewatch them from the beginning, and eventually I'll catch up. But I'm so far out of the MCU, I can't really worry about what's to come in the future. So if you know what though, if they stop making action comedy, I will come back and give it a chance. I mean, I am a Disney fan, which I know is not popular with a lot of our mutuals, but I'm a fan of Disney. I'm just not a fan of MCU's action comedy. McDonald's formulaic action comedy approach, and if that changes, if they bring me something that I find interesting, I will go check it out. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that one.
And I hope I didn't bore anybody with my.
No, you were more interesting than the MCU's been for a long time.
Honestly, that sounded dope as hell. Like it could be something, but it's likely that it might not be. So those are our topics of discussion for the day, and we are going to roll right along into our coming soon section. Woo! This section is infrequent because these days trailers, like really, reaction-worthy trailers are hard to come by. But since we took a little bit of a hiatus, I guess we've racked up some heavy hitters, and we're just going to react to two trailers: the Dune trailer and the trailer for the Mandalorian Season 2. So let's start with Dune. Dune, official trailer, long anticipated, long waited for with bated breath. The movie itself is slated to release December 18th. Now, my suspicion is that it's definitely going to move. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve, obviously director Rival, Blade Runner 2049, masterpiece. And it has, the cast. Timothée Chalamet, Oscar Isaac, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin. Like, you could go on and on and on and on and on. Acting luminaries. It's a sci-fi epic and adaptation of one of the greatest sci-fi books ever, if not the greatest. The book that is one of the inspirational keystones for the Star Wars franchise that we all know so well. Overrated.
Ouch.
It's one of those. It's one of those properties that's been, that has that tag of, it's unadaptable. No one can bring it to the silver screen. There was an attempt in the 80s by David Lynch. Am I right? Am I saying that right? And
Yeah,
that
it was David Lynch.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
Lynch. Yep.
and that you know was a noble attempt but unsuccessful, and people are pretty excited about this one because the word on the street is that he has cracked the code. So we got a trailer for it. It's a beefy trailer, and I'd like to know you guys your instant visceral reaction to the official trailer for Dune. Let's start with Christian, then we'll go to Paul. So let's go.
Yeah. I mean, Paul and I sometimes disagree in our views of Star Wars and the MCU and things like that and what we love, but we agree on how much we both love serious sci-fi and how it's taken a step back in recent years. And it's just, there's not enough of it, and what we get sometimes isn't that great. And, I didn't know what to expect when I first saw the original teaser, but we saw something in this trailer that looks like it's a return to that, and it's sumptuous, and it's lush, and it's shot in a way that makes it seem bigger. And that final shot with, I wouldn't pretend to know what the creature's name is, at the very end of the trailer looks so real, and it doesn't look CGI, but it is CGI, and they just did a wonderful job with this recreation here. And I think in creating this universe, it looks good, and you could see like Oscar Isaac looks like he's on his game. It just looks great. The one thing that I was worried about was not that I have a problem with Timothée Chalamet. I don't. It's just that up until now, I've only kind of seen him basically being Christian Bale Batman, kind of raspy, like, and in this, he looked so much better. Like I got a little bit more of an idea of who he'd be, like the point when he puts his hand in like the box of pain, whatever you call that thing. And it was just awesome to see his reaction there. So there looks like there's a lot of deep shit going on in this movie, and it's a return to form for sci-fi and serious sci-fi that I think a lot of fans have wanted. I think it's interesting, the argument that we've seen online. There's not enough color, and it's not bright. Oh my God, Jesus. I mean, I didn't realize that's the kind of movie it was supposed to be. What the hell's wrong with you people? I'm going to defend the MCU to the day I die. I freaking love that thing, but I would not expect Dune to be the MCU. So can you people stop? Jesus Christ, stop it. This is supposed to be something completely different. And from that regard, it looks awesome. So I'll throw it to Paul, but this thing looks goddamn great. I'm not ready to go into the theater yet. I fully agree with you. I think this thing is getting punted. That's a theater experience movie. If I have to watch it on demand, I will, but that's definitely a theater experience movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it looked good. As I mentioned, in one of our previous podcasts, Dune is something I remember from my childhood. It came out when I was 8 years old. I don't remember if I saw it in the theaters or if I, watched it when it was on TV on Saturdays, when they used to show edited down versions of films on, on cable TV with commercials and whatnot, cropped to 4:3. So I don't remember how I actually consumed this as a kid, but I definitely have imagery in my mind of the Harkonnens in particular. Oh God, I can't remember the guy's name now. The big blob guy floating around with his foils, I just sadly I just read the book, just read the audio, just listened to the audiobook again, and watched the movie, the '84 movie recently again. Yeah, no, I mean I have imagery in my head from that as a kid, and because I had semi-fond memories of that movie. I was very much interested in this, and I went back and I watched the theatrical cut of the '84 movie, and it is not good. It's not. It has some memorable imagery, but it did not age well, and it's not a great movie. And I know Lynch wasn't happy with it either. And there is an extended version of it, which I haven't got around to watching yet, which I think probably gives you more narration and more of the story. I did watch a little bit of it, and the whole beginning is sort of like a cheaply animated intro that I think gives you more background into the world. Mm-hmm. But so I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook was tough to get into. I mean, I can see why I didn't read that when I was younger, and it took some perseverance and dedication to get through. And then once I got into it, I did enjoy it. But I think I also find it a little bit overrated, to be honest. But it was decent, and what Villeneuve has put together in this trailer looks really good. It looks like serious science fiction. The fact that there were no bright colors and no jokes to bring levity, I mean, that's music to my ears. We're actually going to get something that takes itself seriously, which is a rare treat these days. And I mean, this is a desert planet that with sandstorms that kill, that strip fresh flesh from bone. I mean, this is not supposed to be bright color time. This is not a desert oasis. This is a harsh, unforgiving environment where every drop of water has to be saved and recycled. I mean, the whole premise of this is that they're wearing moisture recycling suits, so all their body fluid gets filtered and recycled back into them because even a tear is precious. So this is not fun. This is not a vacation. This is not Pandora. You know what I mean? And I love Avatar, but this is not Pandora. So I think they did a good job of portraying that. I like the look of the suits. I like the look of the characters, reconciling the casting with the characters from the books. I think they did a really good job. The imagery again is it's fantastic. Like you mentioned, the sandworm at the end. I like how they've evolved the look of it from the '84 version. It looks like they've used almost like a baleen filter on these things, on the worms, like probably to filter the sand out. Maybe the same way that a whale would, consume plankton and then flush the water back out through the baleen. Maybe they're going to do something like that with that. I mean, that's what it looked like to me, at least. It kind of looked like a lamprey eel, to be honest. But then it also made me think, no, it's probably more like a baleen kind of thing. but I like, sorry, not to get too nerdy on that stuff, but it just it seems like they put some thought into it. Like if there was a giant sandworm going through the sand, what would it be doing? How would it get through the sand? How would it consume its food? That kind of stuff, right? It looks like someone's put some care into it. Which I like, right? So I thought everything about this trailer looked really good. The music was good until the last minute. And this was my only gripe on this trailer. It was an odd musical choice for that last minute and change that took me out of the trailer that I was really enjoying up to that point. Everything else looked great. I thought it was weird. Did you notice that, Christian? The odd musical switch without a minute, like at about minute 55, it just kicks into this weird song that I don't personally recognize and seemed out of place to me. But
is that a Pink
other
Floyd
than that,
song?
I thought it looked great. Is that what it is?
It's a Pink Floyd song, and I think that they're probably going for that 1970s kind of sci-fi feel. In some ways, it's like we were talking recently about the Snyder Cut teaser, right? And having the song in there. And I understand all the reasons behind it before anybody in the audience rips me open. I totally get it. It almost took me out because I didn't like that musical choice, even though I understand why the musical choice was made. I think in a way, it's probably not as deep as why Snyder decided to put that particular musical piece in there. But I think that might be what they were trying to evoke, kind of that 1970s sci-fi gritty-ish feel, I think. But stuff like that, you're right, Mark. It can take you out. It could take you out of it.
It took me out. Yeah. Took me out. The one other point I would make, Christian, is what you were saying about Timothée Chalamet. I thought he looked good. I don't know much about Timothée Chalamet, but I really liked him in The King. And so I have a favorable impression of him, and I think he looks good in this too. So I'm excited for it. I think it looks great. Lupe, to what you were saying about it moving, I would have been more optimistic if they hadn't just moved Wonder Woman to Christmas Day. I mean, I don't know how in this environment you put Dune in theaters on the 18th and Wonder Woman in theaters on the 25th. And this is one where I think this one probably warrants a theatrical release, and arguably Wonder Woman warrants a theatrical release. Although I'm very much in the camp of just throw Wonder Woman on premium video on demand already and get it over with.
I'm in the camp of just throw Wonder Woman away.
Yeah. Oh my God, that clip. Not to get.
You
know what? I was trying to be cautiously optimistic, but after that ridiculous clip of that guy somersaulting in the air, and
that's not going to be in the movie.
Oh, I bet you it will.
Even if it's not in the movie, it sets a tone.
Yes, it does.
I get it.
For example, you're not going to see that type of commercial for Dune because it doesn't work. Like marketing, things work together, right? Like the tone, the type of character, type of story you're telling. So, yeah.
Well, and we saw Kristen Wiig spinning through the air too, right? I mean, same kind of cheesy cable work, and then even the old behind the scenes footage of Gal Gadot running down the street in Washington where her feet aren't even touching the ground,
and
right?
Why is she swinging like Spider-Man? Like, what is
from lightning bolts? And that is from lightning bolts. No question about it. So
what? Oh my God, I give up with you guys.
Go ahead, continue. She looked like Spider-Man. She looked like Spider-Man. I thought it was freaking hilarious.
Sorry, we've deflated the good feelings about Dune here. Sorry,
back to Dune. Chest pains. Jesus.
Sorry to sidetrack, guys. But no, I just can't see them releasing the two together, and they seem to, and they're probably not wrong that Wonder Woman will be a huge hit. And my daughter's still excited about Wonder Woman. She's not going to care about those kind of things that take me out of the film. So God knows I may still see it, although I really have trouble supporting anything with Jeff Johns' name on it. So it's going to be a bit of an internal conflict on that one. But for me personally, I'd stick Wonder Woman on demand and leave Dune in theaters, and then, like we say, put Dune out on premium video on demand 3 weeks later if they can negotiate it and get the get the compensation worked out for the investors. But anyway, that's probably not going to happen. Probably means Dune's going to move, which makes it kind of odd that they just decided to drop a trailer now if you're going to move the movie anyway, right? But yeah, it is what it is. We have to adjust to the circumstances, and I will be there to watch Dune in theaters when it comes out, assuming that we're not still in under heavy COVID concerns, right?
Screw you, COVID.
What were your thoughts on it, Lupe?
I loved it. I mean, as you guys said, the musical choice very odd, but sometimes even an incongruent musical choice that just sounds like, what the fuck is going on here? This doesn't belong. It can set a tone, right? It can set a mood to let you know, all right, this is not the standard. It's not like your standard, whether it's epic score or rock and roll score or whatever. And I'm glad to see that they're thinking and they're vibrating on a different frequency. I'm here for that. Everything you guys said, I echo those sentiments. Like I'm here for it. I'm down for that. Give me some serious sci-fi. I'm not too hyped or buzzing about it because it's exactly what I expected. I expected a lot, and it delivered just as much. Not below, not above. I expected it to be dope as fuck, and that's exactly what I got. And the comparison that I'll give, what I always wanted it to be, is basically a sci-fi version of Lord of the Rings, and it looks exactly like that. Exactly, like to a T. Like futuristic sci-fi, futuristic Lord of the Rings on another planet. Or Game of Thrones, same thing. Game of Thrones is medieval.
Yep.
Lord of the Rings. This one even visually even looks more like Lord of the Rings in terms of the desaturated color palettes, and the scale of structures and huge swaths of armies and that sort of thing. Landscape shots, beautiful. I'm just a little bit heartbroken because I know it's going to be delayed. I know there's going to be a long wait for this.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's a new world, and where survival is victory. Let's keep it moving. All right. So yeah, tell us what you think of the Dune trailer. Did it not have enough colors? Did you expect more jokes in it? A little winky naughty nod? Tell us what you think about it. And now we're moving on to our next trailer that we'll be reacting to. And it's the one for The Mandalorian Season 2. I honestly didn't expect this series to come back so soon. Usually we see series take longer than a year to bring in their second seasons. But it seems like this is going to be about probably exactly 1 year, give or take a month or so, if I'm not wrong. And that's very impressive. Also under pandemic restrictions, conditions. So I'm super impressed by that. I haven't seen The Mandalorian Season 1. My goal has been to binge watch both seasons together, especially after I heard that it didn't really go very far in Season 1. I will start by saying I didn't watch the trailer, so I'm going to leave this in your capable hands, Christian and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, from showrunner, what's the name of the showrunner again? Why am I forgetting his name?
Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, yeah.
Favreau, yes, exactly. From
And Filoni's got some involvement in this one too.
And Dave Filoni, the Mandalorian Season 2 official trailer. You guys react. What do you think about it?
Christian, you want to take this one first?
Sure. I'll continue. I'll stay positive, Paul. I'll take your spot with the positivity. I loved it.
Maybe I should start. You know what? Let me start. Then you can finish up positive.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Start off.
All
You said you
right.
hate everything. Go ahead. No, I'm
I
joking.
don't
I'm
hate
kidding.
everything, but
I'm
yeah,
kidding. I'm
yeah.
kidding.
No, we're gonna let you finish up with some positivity though. So, I thought season one was kind of mediocre. I was not as sold on it as most people. There was 2 or 3 episodes that I found really entertaining. The rest I found mostly there was a fair amount of cringe and filler, which more filler than cringe, I would actually say. It wasn't that bad from a cringe scale, but it was definitely a lot of time waster episodes. I thought this one I thought overall looked okay. I mean, I thought the CGI at Baby Yoda looked worse. There was some wonky CGI in season one, especially in space, and I noticed that here again. Right off the bat, I didn't love some of the CGI I was seeing. I mean, it's good enough for streaming, but it didn't quite. Look cinematic, all of it. But then again, some of it was really good. Like there was a scene with the stormtroopers on the speeder bikes, kind of drop off the edge of a cliff and keep going. I thought that looked really good. There was a scene where the Mandalorian, I think, might have gone off that same cliff that I thought looked pretty good. So there were some interesting things in it. I'm tired of the Baby Yoda storyline already, and I know that's their big go-to, and it sells toys, and kids love it. My daughter loves it too. I'm done with Baby Yoda. I want them to wrap it up, and I think they're just going to double and triple down on Baby Yoda, so that worries me a little. I'm curious to see who the female character was. At first glance, I thought, oh, is that Ahsoka? And then when you look closer, it's not Rosario Dawson, and I'm not even sure was she fully confirmed to be Ahsoka, or is that still a rumor? Christian, you know the answer to that?
That's a good question. For some reason, I felt like she was actually fully confirmed.
I thought she
don't
was
take my
too.
word for it just yet. I'll take a look at it while you're doing your
Yeah,
things.
I thought she was, but anyway, this actress at first glance I thought was Rosario Dawson, but she looked younger, and sure enough, it's not her. And you can tell by the shape of the hood that she doesn't have the what are called the leku that are
Yes.
on Ahsoka's head, right? So
Yeah.
so you know it's not Ahsoka. So now I don't know who this character is. I mean, I think the trailer implies that she's a Jedi because they show that scene at the time where they're talking about the ancient Mandalorians battling against the Jedi, the sorcerers called the Jedi, and then she just kind of disappears from sight. So I think they're trying to imply she's a Jedi.
Rosario is confirmed, by the way. She's
Confirmed. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we don't know who that is, but I mean it's an interesting new character. So I'm semi excited about this season. It doesn't really heighten my excitement. It doesn't take away from it. It's about what I expected, and I think the book is really still out on it. So I'm going to reserve judgment till we see it. I have a feeling that season 2 is probably going to be much like season 1, and that there'll be 2 or 3 episodes that I really enjoy, and the rest I'm kind of saying, oh well, that wasn't much. Let's hope next week is better. So that's where I'll leave it. Christian, what do you think?
I loved it. I thought this trailer was great, and I'm fine that they pushing the Baby Yoda storyline, if that's what you want to call him, or the child, whatever they're going to be calling him, I think is just fine as well, especially because Favreau and Filoni absolutely understand the lore, they understand the history and the world building, and it looks like things are picking up right away. Din Djarin is trying to find the Jedi that can care for the child, and the Empire, it looks like Moff Gideon, right, is the remnants of the Empire, I should say, are hunting him down. And they understand the relationship between Mandalore and the Jedi. They understand some of the respect that's there, but the hatred that's there as well. I love the fact that this looks just like George Lucas did back in the past. This looks like a very lived-in, rough, beaten-up universe. That's the way it should look. The prequels looked very clean and sterile. The Empire had not come quite yet. The Republic had not fallen at that point. And this looks much more like what George Lucas had originally planned for the original trilogy. And I like that. And they're keeping that. And the relationship between Mando and the child is still the heart and soul of this show. And they didn't double down on how cute he was. They had one little cutesy moment with him shutting his little, bit, whatever you want to call it, little thing. They had that little moment in there, but it's interspersed with a lot of world building. At least it seems like that's where they're going. And of course, Mando being a badass, and that's what you want. And Filoni and Favreau have talked about how they want this to be a little bit larger, and they want to go down a couple of different paths here. And they will focus on the Mandalorian. It looks like they want to build the larger universe that eventually gets us to The Force Awakens, even if it is still a number of years before that. And it harkens back to the sci-fi magazines and serials that George Lucas liked. A lot of that stuff was one and done. He didn't, you know, a lot of the stuff that he based Star Wars on was one episode and it's done. And I think that that's kind of what they were going for in the first season. So I don't think it was had nearly as much filler as Paul did. That's not to bash his opinion. That's just that we disagree on that. However, I will admit that when they really started to get into a little bit more of the overarching storyline, I did like it a little better. So I have to agree with him on this. I hope they lean into that a little heavier than just going with the monster of the week or whatever, Jedi of the week kind of thing. But it doesn't seem like they want to go that route. Based on this trailer and based on what we've heard from Filoni and Favreau, it seems that they want to go a little bit more into the lore. And I think if you really liked season 1, you're pumped for season 2. If you're on the fence like Paul, you're probably still on the fence. And if you hate it, you're going to hate it. So I loved season 1. So all this did was whet my appetite even more. And I really enjoy it. It looks and feels like Star Wars. And most stuff looks and feels like Star Wars. But this really does look and feel like Star Wars. And I like Favreau and Filoni. I really think they have a handle on things. I think they understand it. So yeah, and this is still a prestige show, and it is almost a year to the day. It was November 12th, 2019 when it premiered. So you're looking at about a year. And season 3 has already been confirmed. So we're getting more of this. I still think that this is definitely a prestige show for Disney Plus. It's going to be a hit. They're probably going to capitalize on Baby Yoda, and we can all like or hate that to whatever our heart's content. But the expansion of the relationship between those two characters, definitely. The expansion of a little bit more of the lore of Mandalore and the relationship with the Jedi, I would like to see that. And who the hell is Moff Gideon? And it looks like we're going to get a little bit. I want to see how he got the Darksaber. I think that's all going to happen this season. I don't know. I think just based on what they've said. So yes, color me excited. I'm really happy about this. I'll be watching it on night 1, and I'm sure I'm going to like it. And that's it. So yeah, go ahead.
One question for you, Christian. I agree with the look of the lived-in world. The one thing that consistently takes me out with this iteration of Star Wars, it took me out in the very first episode, and it took me out in this trailer, is when these aliens have American accents, American voices, and it made me just both times. It's made me want subtitles back. I want alien gibberish with subtitles.
And you know what?
Did you notice that as well? Because it drives me insane when I hear an American voice on these aliens.
And I don't think it bothers me as much as you did, because we did our breakdown of Mandalorian season 1, and we talked about that, and we also, the two of us, if you remember, we talked about, is it better to do that or to have almost like a quasi-racist Asian accent like they did with the Phantom Menace? You know, no to that. That's bad. Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I want the alien gibberish, like the chirps and chirps and sounds with subtitles. Yeah, I don't.
That's
but they did. I mean, they had that kind of stuff in the original Star Wars trilogy, right? And that's gone away. So
yeah, even in the prequels, they moved away from that. It's really you're right.
It's aiming it for kids. I think it's more for kids. Kids don't want to read words.
It makes it easier to swallow. It's easier to digest that way, and I would agree with you. You know,
it takes me out though. I mean,
well, it goes
those
back
voices take me out.
No, I can't disagree with it. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about with Chadwick Boseman and fighting for the accent. It can take you out of it. I can understand that. Again, it doesn't hit me, I think, as hard. It didn't take me out as much. Star Trek's always used it in there. They have the universal translator, and that's how they explain it away, right? Everyone's got the universal translator, so you hear it in whatever language or wherever area you're from. So that's how they explain it. They never really have explained that in Star Wars, except, they speak basic.
Yeah, or I mean, they've got a buddy that'll translate for them. Like he says he does, like someone's grunting and the other one says, hey, he says he doesn't like you, right? But I would rather have that. That doesn't take me out of it. Like if he's got a buddy that could translate for him, good enough for me. I'm willing to suspend disbelief.
That's funny. No, I think no matter what, they probably got another hit. People seem to. There's not much that unites Star Wars fans lately, except for basically Clone Wars and Mandalorian. We all hate everything, whether it's the prequels or whether it's the sequels or whether it's the special edition. We all hate everything.
I still like The Rise of Skywalker.
That's fine. I just watched. I was reading something the other day about people going ballistic on Return of the Jedi, and I was like, oh my God, people stop. So there's really not much that Star Wars fans can get behind, and I'm hoping this is just something that we can continue to get behind, because there's just not much for us to unite behind lately when it comes to Star Wars. We just want to hate everything. So I'm pumped for this thing.
Cool. I mean, I love the discussion you guys had on it. I love that they are divergent perspectives. I don't know who to believe. It's like one time I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen it, but Paul is actually making sense. Maybe I shouldn't be so hyped. And then my head snaps back when Christian talks about it. I'm like, who should I believe? I will watch it for myself. What I'll say is that I will wait until the season's over so I can binge watch it together. I think Paul did advise that I do that
Hmm.
since it 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 was quite staccato. So if I put them together, maybe the narrative will be more interesting as a whole for me. And I'll let you guys know what I think as a non Star Wars fan who's not part of your toxic fandom.
I'll be curious to hear what you think, because I mean my initial thinking is that if you don't like Star Wars already, then you really aren't going to like this. But maybe
Yeah.
not. Maybe it'll be the opposite effect.
No,
Maybe
I'll
this
be
will surprise you because it's better than some of the stuff you dislike. I don't know.
yeah, I'll be open minded. One thing about me is that, and I hope that people who listen to me, whenever I give opinions, I hope that they've come to know this about me, that I never hold biases against anything. I can have an expectation going in. We're all human, but I never hold biases against anything. Like, for example, if I go see Wonder Woman and it's great, I will say it's great.
Hmm.
There is nothing in the world that's going to make me going into a movie not giving it a chance or even giving it more of a chance. For example, if Justice League, the movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Snyder Cut, if it's not good, I'll say it's not good and I'll say what I don't like about it. For example, something that we haven't talked about was that Junkie XL released a clip of his score for the Snyder Cuts, and I wasn't impressed. But I haven't been impressed by Junkie XL for a long time. I think he was someone I had high hopes for and I absolutely loved. And I was like, he's next up. Like, he's one of the next guys. Like after Hans Zimmer, this is the next generation. I think that his stuff is very bland, it's repetitive, it's very generic, and the score that he teased for the Snyder Cut sounds exactly like the stuff I think he'd do. However, I do think it's much better than what Danny Elfman did, and it's more in line with the tone and what we expect. I just don't
Yeah.
think it's transcendental and what I'd want. So there
I
goes.
actually agree with you on that, Lupe. I sorry, not to cut you
Yeah,
off.
go ahead.
I would say that I liked it. It was good, but it doesn't blow me away like Zimmer does. But it's still an
Yeah,
improvement over Elfman. And like you said, the big thing is it's tonally consistent, and that's
exactly.
that's
Yeah.
what we need.
Hans
So
Zimmer
that
though.
that's me giving you a dose of honesty. Like I'm not going to be. So if the Mandalorian is super great and it's amazing, I will straight up say, oh, it's amazing, it's good. For example, same thing. Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey. It's one of the children of the bastardized DCEU from the Hope and Optimism, Jeff Johns, and I said I enjoyed it. I did not think it was a bad film at all. I know Paul
I thought it was unwatchable,
Paul
unwatchable.
does not agree with me.
Oh God.
Um, um, but yeah. So you guys, you can always trust my opinions when it comes to things. I can't say the same for many other people in film Twitter, and that's something that I think a lot of people, especially people who are people who have a voice and a platform, really need to work on. But that's something that we pride ourselves on at the Film Exiles, is that you're going to get opinions that are not agenda driven, that have no bias, whether it be for things that we are biased against or things that we really, even if we really want something to succeed, if it's not good, we're not going to sugarcoat it. And
Hmm.
you guys can always trust that you're going to get that from us. And with that being said, we will put a bow on and wrap up this episode of the Exiles Network News Podcast.
Woohoo!
Um, feels so good to be reunited and back. And we're hoping to really get back into the swing of things and give you guys, regular content. Look out for the next episode of ENN, obviously. And also, there's going to be a discussion coming from Brandon and I. We're going to talk about Netflix's Dark series, and Brandon has watched YouTube's Impulse, and he's going to talk about it. So we're going to bring you guys some really cool content. It's been a long episode. Thank you for hanging in there and conversing with us. Talk to us on our social medias, the official account for the channel, on our private accounts as well. So with that being said, guys, say goodbye to the people. Christian.
Goodbye to the people. No, thank you so much. Thanks for hanging in with us, guys. We know it was a long one. We appreciate it. We always appreciate your comments too. And to Paul and to Lupe, hey guys, we disagree on stuff sometimes, and we get very passionate. And we talk. I appreciate both of you. Thank you for always wanting to be open and talk about all this stuff, and I appreciate both of your takes and both of your opinions, and you've become friends over the last couple of years, so thank you. Everybody out there, you can reach out to me, you can yell at me about my opinions on Twitter and Instagram at the same place at chart6363.
Amen. And Paul.
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but as always, guys, I enjoyed getting a chance to talk with you tonight, and if anyone wants to reach out, you can reach me on Twitter at _Paul_P.
All right. And Christian, the feeling is very mutual. Paul, I love you guys. You guys have become, part of my family. You guys are deeply embedded in the DNA of my routine. What's a week without Ian and talking to you guys? And you guys, you are the best. You're truly amazing people. And the same can be said about our audience, people who listen to us and support us and lift us up. We really appreciate you guys. And with that being said, I have been yours truly, Lupe. If you'd like to send any hot mail, feel free to send it to Paul and Christian, not me. But if you have nice comments, send them to Lupe at LiveLoveLupe on Twitter. I'm also on Vero at LiveLoveLupe. The social media account for the Film Exiles is The Film Exiles at Twitter and The Film Exiles at Vero. And until next time, guys, no matter what you do, no matter where you go, stay exiled.